2.
I can't seem to face up to the facts. I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. I can't sleep 'cause my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Lucas and Zack podcast. Far better. Pod away. Whoa. Pod.
Boom.
I skipped half of the chorus, but I felt it was time to get to the point.
Hey, I mean, it works for me. Yes. Hello, folks. This is a podcast, not two gentlemen just having fun singing songs together. It's the bonus episode.
That's a nice word. You've never tried to sing with me.
That is not true. I sang the Eurovision songs. You should stop forgetting this.
You listen to that, it turned out real bad. We are not lined up enough in the internet for it to come up in any
No, it does not work. I tried to convince us we should sing Borat songs. You refused on the grounds that you didn't want to be canceled.
I said I am happy for you to sing the Borat song. Go crazy.
Would you like to have a disclaimer on the screen that says Zack Ford does not support this?
Yes.
Well, welcome back. It's March. It's the final episode of March. It's the bonus episode talking our top 10s of 2020, talking the best movies, best performances, best everything of 2020. We will break down the top 100 uses of butter from 2020.
Wait, is that a thing?
No.
You catch on to these trends and movies more than I do.
No.
Butter, 2020's mushrooms or 2020's breakfast eggs.
Guys, Julia Child told us this. You can never have too much butter. That still remains true. Butter is delicious. Zach, do you like butter?
I like butter, but I would think science would say that you could have too much butter.
Yes, science would definitely say that, but I choose to believe Julia Child. This is the part of the show we would typically go into last Letterboxd movie. For our top 10s of 2020 episode, we're going to take a look at other people's top 10s. And sort of top 10s and longer versions that they may have sent me because they're overachievers.
That Coho?
That is definitely Coho. Let's start right there. We're going to start with Mr. Caleb Coho, who sent me his top 20 of 2020, just trying to keep it in line. I appreciate the effort. His number 20 is a film that we've talked about, which is, of course, Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. Zach, do you have any thoughts on Eurovision Contest?
Oh, wait, are we talking about every movie? I feel like we should save these thoughts.
No, this is a joke, dumbass. We just did an entire podcast. We have an hour and 54.
I have no thoughts on Eurovision. I've never heard of it. Continue.
Zack Ford hates Eurovision. In fact, he's a big anti-Eurovision. His number 19 is something called Standing Up, Falling Down. I have not heard of this movie.
No, I'm going to look this up now. There's no way this is good, right? I have a real skepticism.
How much do you bet this is a Netflix movie? This has got to be a Netflix movie, right?
I don't know. I have a lot of skepticism. My mom actually watches a lot of movies I never heard of, and I feel like I'm very in touch and just very aware. And if I haven't heard of it, it means that movie's shit.
See, your mom does the same thing. Your mom does what my mom does, where they just go on a streaming service and they pick a random movie that they've never heard of and they start watching it, and they're like, "You should watch this movie." And I'm like, "No, because I've never heard of this."
Because my mom reads the word Holocaust and goes, "I must watch this." This is how
for my mom, it's crime dramas, European crime dramas. If there's a European crime drama, she will watch it.
I have heard of Standing Up, Falling Down. It is the Billy Crystal and Ben Schwartz movie based on stand-up. I think he and the critic Mike Ryan from New York are the only people in my letterbox that have seen it.
Fun fact. Okay. Number 18 is Freaky, which is a movie that I want to see but just didn't get to catch up in time for this episode. Any thoughts, Freaky? No?
I didn't watch it because I don't like Happy Death Day.
Fair. 17 is Borat's subsequent movie film. We have an entire episode with Scott Harvey. Please go listen to that. Buffaloed is... I like Buffaloed.
Is that Buffaloed?
Buffaloed. I don't know.
Buffaloed. Buffalo.
Oh, there's only it's Load. That's the Zoe Deutsch film. I like Zoe Deutsch. It's from the filmmaker who did Flower.
I'm kind of amazed you didn't watch this one. It seems like a Lucas thing.
I did watch it.
Okay.
I also watched their previous film together, Flower, which is basically a comedy where the entire joke is she gives blowjobs.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of these. I feel like a lot of people are much more Zoe Deutsch completist than me. Okay.
I'm a fan. 15 is Mank, which is a movie that I like, but just doesn't fall. We'll see later. Just a little bit outside of my top 20. Nothing.
Like it.
Yeah, this is not a bad top 10 so far. 14 is Nomadland, which is a 2021 film.
It is a horrible top 10 because you're at 14.
Number 13 is I Care a Lot, which I believe may also be a 21 film.
Yeah, this is cheating. I feel like we should have sent him the rules.
The Climb.
I forgot Coho's life is dictated by the Oscars, and Oscar calendar has changed his whole thing.
Except we are also dictated by the traditional Oscar rules, except 2020 breaks the rules, which is why we continued with what would 2019's rules the Oscars would have been.
You are by the traditional. I refuse, and I will often count foreign language movies that come out in the previous or next year, always, as the next year.
Oh, man, I guess you can do that if you want to. So 12 is The Climb.
Like 12 is The Climb. Had this conversation.
11 is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Okay. Yeah. I think you and me are both much lower on that film than maybe general populace.
I think we're much lower in all the play films than the general populace.
I would agree. Number 10 is Minari, which is also a 2021
2021. Yep. So by the end of this will be a 2020 list.
This is basically, he has like 5 entries for his 21. Number 9 is Another Round. Number 8 is News of the World. Number 7 is Palm Springs. Number 6 is Boy State. It's a good run. I can't hate those. 5 is Soul. I don't like Soul as much as most people.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's fun to be on this list.
4 is One Night in Miami. 3 is Trial of the Chicago 7. 2 is Promising Young Woman. And number 1 is Hamilton. Which is not surprising because he's watched it fucking 15 times. That's a fine. What do you say if you had to grade that top 20? Was that like a B minus?
I dropped it because he doesn't follow rules of years and calendars. So
I would say B. Okay, I would give him a B minus. I think there's a couple movies in there I go those shouldn't be in there, and then there's he doesn't understand years, which is fun.
If I get rid of that rule, I will give it a B. But he also. Oscars don't dictate our lives, people. Just because it's qualified for the 2021 Oscars it did not come out in 2020.
But also, I think
numbers matter, years matter.
Well, no. You and me follow the Oscar rules typically. The difference is we're following what the 2019 rules would have been.
Once again,
where it has to be released by the 31st of December.
I always go by U.S. release date.
Yeah, but that's the Oscars thing.
No, because foreign languages do not often get U.S. releases.
No. I do foreign languages by Oscars, but the rest of we mostly agree outside of the foreign language. Okay, the difference is this year, 2020, the rules are different because they let the eligibility last into 2021. You and I made our list more in line with the 2019 rules where it had to be released in the U.S. by December 31st.
The Oscars usually care about how a real calendar functions, and this year it did because of other rules. But that doesn't mean we should change with it as well.
It's really funny looking back to it based on this choice. I don't think that choice really affects the Oscars that much. I think most of the movies that are being released early in the first 2 months of 2021 for the Oscars this year would have just been released in December if they had said that. It's not like that. It's not like they needed to come out in February because they weren't done. I think most of them are probably done already.
Yeah, maybe a couple they would have held back. Like maybe Judas would have held back a year.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? And then to finish it off, I want to also dig in and say Coho's worst movie of 2020 is The Jesus Rolls. So that's his least favorite. Always fun to find out what people hate. Next up is former guest Scott Harvey. He sent me a top 16.
Oh my gosh, why does no one follow rules here? How many of these are from 2021? How many of these are from 2008?
In his defense, I think he just took a screenshot and sent it to me, so it has 16 options on it.
Yeah.
But we're going to read them anyway. So he goes, number 16, The Invisible Man. Number 15, First Cow. Number 14, Mangrove. Number 13, Shirley. Number 12, The Assistant. 11 is Freaky. 10, Shithouse. 9, Minari, so ding. 8, Mank. 7, Soul. 6, Sound of Metal. 5, Boy State. 4, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. 3, Time. 2, Possessor. 1, Nomadland.
So No Man Land also dig, but I will say he gets a little bit of a pass on I think Minari at least, maybe Nomadland, because I know he saw that in 2020.
Yes, I'm pretty sure Scott saw these at festivals or something.
Yeah.
Where it would make sense why he's listed them. Honestly, pretty decent top 10. It's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah.
And once again, really emphasizes how the strength of 2020, and we can tie this into our discussion of what this year was like. The strength of 2020 was in smaller films and indies and first timers and people just kind of trying something and seeing what happens. Like that top 10 is filled with a lot of movies of people who are not necessarily established names going, yeah, I'm just going to make a movie. And then, just kind of doing it.
The festival running movies that could still survive in that era that didn't rely on having a big screen release. Yeah, the two biggest, most important genres of 2020 are small indie festival films and great European set comedies starring Will Ferrell. Two best genres of 2020.
Except that also includes Downhill, which is ass.
It is European set too, isn't it? Yeah.
Yup. And Scott Harvey's least favorite movie of 2020 is The Lovebirds, which was, I don't know, not good.
Fine. It's a rough one to say as your worst, but maybe like Scott, like me, tries to avoid a lot of the movies that are supposed to be bad.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily have a ton on his list of like
really bad ones.
Like the ones you're like, you actively sought out garbage. Yeah. Like, I used to do and don't anymore.
Kind of.
No, I really don't anymore. It's very different. All right, next up is former guest Mike Hanley. This is going to be weird. Number 10, The Devil All the Time. Number 9, Relic. Number 8, The Wretched. Number 7, The Mortuary Collection. The Lodge is at number 6. Bill and Ted Face the Music at number 5. Guns Akimbo at number 4. Freaky at number 3. Come to Daddy at number 2. And Host at number 1. I didn't see any of those movies. Did you see any of those movies?
There's 3 or 4 of them. I have no idea what they are because they're like probably all.
They look super low budget horror movies.
That's Mike for you. At least Mike does Mike. I actually wouldn't expect Host, which I think probably has the most acclaim of the movies on there, to be Mike's top one because I didn't see it as this like kind of weird version of a horror movie, which I think I relate to more with Mike, like a B movie. I feel like it's more of a straight up actual horror movie. Oh, Come to Die is the Elijah Wood movie.
Yes, hilarious. This is a very Mike top 10. I think we can agree. So A+ for authenticity to being Mike.
Come to Die is directed by a guy named Ant, so I approve that. His name's Ant Timpson.
And Mike's least favorite movie of 2020 is something called The Wrong Missy, which looks like a David Spade film.
It's like a Happy Madison production Netflix movie.
It looks terrible.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike, for just keeping you and watching movies that none of us see. Next up is another former guest, Nazario Montenegro.
Wait, can we address that Mike Hanley's worst movie, worst Missy Pie is still a 3.5 stars? I need to check this. It's probably still it's a fucking good movie.
Mike Hanley is famous for liking, he's a positive man.
2.5 stars. He said it's a fucking movie.
All right.
Still won't use negative terms.
All right. Moving on to Nazario Montenegro, who goes Freaky at number 10, Mangrove at number 9, Promising Young Woman at number 8, Shirley at number 7, The Invisible Man at number 6, Palm Springs at number 5, Mank at number 4, I'm Thinking of Ending Things at number 3, Soul at number 2, and The Devil All the Time at number 1.
That's ridiculous. I didn't see that movie because there's a lot of hate for it. But that Nazario having that like as a firm number 1 all year he's the only one. I can't judge him. He's just the only one. That's a real Nazario list because it's like some artsier, thoughtful movies mixed with just horror movies that have some nostalgia what you watched as a kid and Disney movie, of course. That's Nazario altogether.
Honestly, I like 7 of those movies, so I'm not gonna complain.
Freaky's on everybody's list. I did not see this, guys.
I did not see it either. It was just one of the ones I ran out of time for. His last on the list is Artemis Fowl, which makes sense. Yeah. We continue to Chance Ellison, recent guest, Chance Ellison. His top 10 is Palm Springs, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, The Trial of the Chicago 7, The Way Back, Promising Young Woman, Nomadland, Ding, Da 5 Bloods, One Night in Miami, Small Axe as a Collection, and Soul.
You cheated. Small Axes, 5 films, so it's actually a top 14.
Also, I'll be honest. If you make Small Axe a collection, I don't think it deserves to be in your top 10.
Oh, really?
Because there's 2 movies. No, I think because if you add all those movies together, 2 movies drag the other ones down. There are definite tiers to those movies. Those movies are not all individually great.
I think I got a lot higher in Education than you ended up being. So there's only one that drags it down.
I still like Education, but Education's
at 26 as my second lowest for me out of 100.
So I think that's actually honestly not far off from where I would have it. But yes, Alex Wheatle I think does pull it down.
But I think you have 4 movies in your top 25 in that altogether. That has to be your number 1.
That's fair. And then his last movie is Doolittle, which is fair.
I think you should just fuck with everybody and just say that their worst movies are their best list. This is how this show should run. I want to know that Chance actually loves Doolittle and it's his favorite movie. He has watched it 8 times. And he walks around with the Doolittle hat talking to people, animal reviews.
Next up, another former guest, Mr. Jake Maragoni. His number 10 is Bad Boys for Life. His number 9 is The Old Guard, which is, I think, a movie you and me both read is kind of
overrated by some people. I feel like Jake didn't watch it much. This is the opinion I'm getting right away.
He has 27 movies on his list.
Okay, let's go.
Red, White, and Blue is at number 8. Sound of Metal at number 7. Mank at number 6. Mangrove at number 5. 4 is Palm Springs. 3, Defy Bloods. 2, Tenet. 1, I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah, solid.
So that's like a C+, maybe? It's not a great top 10.
It's fine. I think If Anything is a real Jake number 1, so I approve of him.
It's like, yeah, and his last movie is something called Pay Dirt, which features Val Kilmer. So this is
why is Jacob Val Kilmer completist? I hope so.
In his review for the movie, he blames another human being who must have made him see it. And finally, our last top 10 to discuss before we move on to our own is, of course, Paul Yama.
Once and never Paul Yama.
At some point, this joke is going to come off as us being really mean to him.
Or it's going to get ruined by him coming on the show.
I know. His number 10 is Lover's Rock. His number 9 is Ride Your Wave. His 8, Never Rarely, Sometimes Always. His 7, Fast of the Night. His 6, Dick Johnson is Dead. His 5, Shithouse. His 4, Minari, Ding. His 3, Mangrove. His 2, No Man Like Ding. And his number 1, First Cow.
Yeah, Paul is very adamant.
Paul likes Scott Harvey. Paul likes Scott Harvey. Saw those movies in 2020 on the festival circuit.
Yeah.
It's a good top 10. And then his worst is... Let's see, what is his worst? Artemis Fowl.
Sure. It's an A because it's Paul and Paul has good taste.
Which is a movie I just didn't want to see. Yeah. So there were top 10s from people. There's some interesting takes, some questionable uses of the word 2020. Some people watched the movie, some people didn't.
I was hoping someone really fucked up and put like a 2018 movie in there.
Yeah. Which brings us to an important question we've already touched on a little bit. What kind of year was 2020 for movie, Zach? If you have to say, if like in 5 years we look back, like a lot of times we do the 5-year retrospectives of movie years. Yeah. What in 5 years are we going to look back at 2020 and think of dates this year?
I mean, other than it being a year where I got a lot of fights about release dates, it is. I mean, I was always hoping it was going to be the year that indies really got to shine. And that's where the notice got to be because that's what was available. And I was like, people are hungry, for new movies, that they might give these movies their time that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise when, Tenet and Marvel and stuff was playing instead, which I think is true to some extent. I do think some movies got a lot more notice than other times, including like First Cow. I think a lot of people watched that maybe they wouldn't have watched otherwise, maybe Wolf Walkers, but not to the extent that I wanted. I still feel like people started turning either to older movies or watching like the dumbest Netflix movie coming out because it had recognizable stars. I think the biggest important thing moving forward is, of course, the dominance of streaming. That's my nickname. One thing is Zachary Max Plus as a sign of streaming services are, I think, not just major players, but they're the major players, and theaters are the B team. at this point. I predicted a while that theaters, I think, is going to become a niche service. Like, I think, especially like art house theaters will always exist, and maybe some nostalgia theaters. But I think having these big 20-screen theaters playing, the Marvel movie day screens, I think is going to slowly start to die out. As I think.
Ooh, could I challenge one point there?
Yeah,
I disagree with you slightly. I think that the movie theaters will still exist. I think the difference is not going to be the Marvel movie playing less theaters. I think what you're going to see is the Cinemarks and the big chains are going to become theaters that have 5 screens, and they play the Marvel movie for 2 months, and then they play the DC movie for 2 months, and then they play the Pixar movie for 2 months. And what you'll see more than anything is the weeding out of the other stuff those theaters used to show. I think they'll show less smaller stuff because it's not worth their money to show those movies in the first
I think
place.
there'd be all the art houses are still around because those are the people that care about the cinematic experience that will go to these, smaller movies that maybe are harder to reach on streaming services too. Whether it be.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Alamo Drafthouse went bankrupt. That's a pretty big hit against the.
They never tried to reopen smartly.
Yeah.
And maybe more premium screening experiences might become a thing. As far as like my favorite movie theater here that's never reopened is also a microbrew, and so things that have this kind of combined experience. I think that's what theaters are going to have to do to survive, is make it a reason to go out rather than just to see the movie. A little more of a communal thing, which I think they'll survive. It's just going to become very different. And honestly, business-wise, I feel like it makes sense when these companies have a monopoly. Then they can release the product themselves rather than having to have a middle player. It kind of starts to make more sense. So it's a love-hate. Access is nice, but the movie theater experience is great. But that's really what the year's going to be remembered for the. I don't want to say it's the start of the demise because I think that probably started a long time ago, but when it became very aware that things are going to change for the long run.
Yeah. It's really an expansion of the streaming services to being the place to go for new movies rather than the place you go to watch the TV show that came out 5 years ago or the movie that's 7 years old. It's really like Netflix started this, but the other the other streaming services have really ramped it up and just being like, we are going to have releases. They're going to be big event releases. HBO Max is probably the biggest example of this right now. They're doing a couple a month where it's like, you need to come to HBO Max. It'll only be here for a month after we drop it. That's like a big, I think that's the future. I mean, I was also just looking up the domestic box office for 2020. And the funny thing is there are 11 movies who broke $50 million at domestic box office. They include movies such as 1917, Jumanji: The Next Level, Rise of Skywalker, Little Women, which are all movies that came out last year.
Yeah.
And the other stuff is just stuff that came out in January, February, like Bad Boys for Life or Sonic the Hedgehog or Birds of Prey and, Doolittle. I mean, the rest of this, we saw the world shut down and the theater shut down with it. I think one of the biggest things I noticed while doing, getting ready for this podcast, doing my rankings, doing everything, there are not the blockbusters. There are no blockbusters in 2020.
I think Tenet's the only one of my top 25. It's not my top 10, so I'm not spoiling anything.
And that's another thing. It wasn't even that there wasn't a lot of them. Is it the ones that came out weren't very good? Like, most of them were disappointing. I mean, Wonder Woman 1984 was very disappointing. I thought Soul was kind of disappointing. Onward was pretty meh. Like, these movies did not come out and pop the way they usually do. And I do think that was part of the studios being, intelligent and sitting there going, okay, we're shut down now. Which ones we're going to have to put something? We're going to have to dump some of these movies at some point. We can't keep holding on to them all. And I do think that in some ways they dumped a lot of the stuff that they thought maybe wasn't that great to begin with.
Yeah, that might not be their big money makers that they can, save on. Why wait on something and then it comes out and doesn't perform either? I do want to add to the HBO Max thing that it also seems like their experiment, as far as my amateur knowledge of business and economy is. And by amateur, I mean I know shit, and it makes me very anxious thinking about that stuff sometimes. But is that it seems like to be very successful. They're stream on day of release. Even though half the theaters in the country are closed, they're still making close to 20 million on Tom and Jerry. I think what just got released that went over 20 million that I'm forgetting about. Oh my gosh.
Oh wow.
Right, Last Dragon, which is Disney. So same thing, still released at home and on release that made over 20 million. What you call it, Denzel Washington, made a decent amount of money. So
Little things.
they're still like making this odd amount of money in theaters to add on to them, also seemingly raising their subscriber rate a lot. So it's not really damaging. People are worried like, why if you release at home, who's going to go in theaters? It's still people are going, and so they're splitting their market wisely, I think.
I think the Disney move is especially smart. The pay $30 for premium access to Disney Plus. I think that's a really smart strategy going forward, especially while a lot of the country still doesn't have continuous access to movie theaters. Depending on where you are, in some places there's a lot of access, some places there's not. And $30 sounds like a lot, but then if you think about if you're a family who's going to take your family to go see Raya and the Last Dragon anyway, you'll happily cough up $30 to watch that at home, not have to worry about the risk, and it's cheaper.
I think the only obvious risk is it opens up to pirating. Like people who are like, I'm not paying $30 and they steal it.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing that tech companies have realized over time is that people are going to pirate regardless. Yeah. And you can't build your business model around trying to do something because of or not do something because of piracy. It's just not going to work. People are going to do people watch freaking 360p camcorder recordings of stuff rather than go to the theater. There are levels people stoop to watch stuff that are they'll watch a garbage version. They'll watch it chopped up into chunks on YouTube. There's you can't really stop that stuff.
I guess it's the same rationale of why streaming services just kind of try to embrace the password sharing. That's why they have the group. Now you can have different accounts because there's nothing we can do to stop it. So you just gotta try to work through it. Yeah.
Well, I think also they've realized that if you enforce the password thing really stringently, that doesn't mean that you'd actually gain any people. A lot of the people who share accounts, if you and me and 3 other people share an account and it's in my name and they say you can't share passwords anymore and they kick you 4 off, there's not a guarantee that the 4 of you guys would go get your own accounts. And in some ways, having access to it might make you more likely to buy your own subscription or convince somebody else to get it because you're talking about it than just kicking you off. There might be no actual value to the studio in terms of kicking you off.
Say how my family works. We're more willing to get other ones that maybe we don't use. I do have Apple TV Plus, even though they don't have tons of stuff. And I could think about Paramount because I'm not paying for everything else. So we don't have to make decisions since we're splitting everything 4 ways. We can do more services that maybe if we were all buying separately, we would all just have Netflix, HBO, Disney, but not choose to buy these smaller services.
I do also think that the studios value the word of mouth that exists when 8 people are sharing a Disney Plus account and they all watch Raya or they all watch Onward or Soul or something. That is valuable to them. That helps them build a consumer base, is that people are talking about their stuff. If they restricted that down really harshly, you'd have less people talking about it, and that might actually not be good for you.
Especially when they're trying to sell other products. If people just watch Raya and they pay for it, they might buy toys.
Right. It's a whole system. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is some thoughts on 2020. Let's talk some top 10s. You ready for top 10s?
Yeah. Top 10
awesome.
Animals I came in contact with today.
Ooh. Saw a chipmunk the other day.
Yeah, I said today.
My apologies.
Number 10. My cat?
All right.
Let's do, okay.
Let's do 10 to 1. Alternate picks. Why don't you start with your 10? If we both have it on our list, we can just talk about it now and skip it when we get to it.
Yeah. My number 10 is The Assistant. The Assistant is slowcore as a movie. Slowcore is a music term, but slowcore as a movie, as in it is hyper realistic, almost to a droll extent. But it follows a young woman who just got hired as an assistant for I think a production company.
Think so.
Yeah, assumingly. trying to make her way within that business. I think she has hopes for and ambitions to rise up and through Hollywood system. While she is there, you kind of for half the movie just kind of watch her, do her job, be frustrated by the job, how she's kind of treated. But mostly she comes to become suspicious of how her boss is kind of a Harvey Weinstein stand-in, how it seems like he is treating other women, maybe making them do sexual favors for positions and or casting. Now they don't do anything so explicitly. This movie smartly kind of keeps it all as like background tension and suspicion, but because it's not about the crime itself or even that character. They don't even show him throughout the movie, as far as my memory.
They They never show him.
Yeah, they don't show him.
We hear him a couple times mumbling. It's kind of brilliant though, because
he's not the point.
It makes it universal. The point is that this kind of behavior exists in corporate systems, and that this guy is not unique as an individual. He's just one of many.
Well, the point experience is like everyone else around it, everyone in there that through complicity, through not stepping in and acting like this is just part of how things work, is what enables that system. Like the biggest villain that you come in contact with and see is the HR worker that kind of dismisses her complaint. So it's
Matthew McFadden is so good.
It's
absolutely rules that.
So I think the approach that the director Kitty Green takes of maintaining the tension without the necessity to go over the top with the drama of it all makes it seem more real, makes it more complex in its themes, and also like makes us as viewers hold ourselves kind of accountable for maybe how we can be complicit in actions of other people, rather than just being able to say these are monsters out there, they're horrible, but like what role do we have in letting the system take place, which is I think a more nuanced thing to be working on than just if it was like directly playing off the Me Too monsters, I think it might come off a little more heavy-handed. So
it's also like
just a great performance by Julia Garner, I want to say as well. So
she's really good.
Yeah.
So I also like this movie a little bit less than you, I think. But definitely really powerful, really strong performance. How soft it is really important. Like you watch the strain happen on her face, but we never experience like what would be the overdramatic scene of like an actual mental breakdown. You kind of just watch her get like pushed to the edge and then figure out a way to keep going over and over again. And that's what kind of makes it it's like such a portrait in terms of like how bad these situations are, like how powerless she feels. She's watching all this terrible behavior around her. No one else seems to care. She cares, but she also realizes that she has no ability to do anything about it. And when she does say something, she accomplishes nothing. And she is rebuked for even bringing it up as a potential problem. It's a lot of movies in 2020 talking about how complicit we are and how our behavior enables everyone else's bad behavior, and how, yes, the bad people in the system are a problem, but also a problem are all the people who just stand by and let it happen because it's not personally affecting us. Yeah, I mean, Borat, this is the entire point of Borat. It's just like he says stuff that allows people to be complicit in awfulness. And, that's kind of like the test of all Borat scenes is like, I'm going to say something super heinous and sexist or racist or anti-Semitic, and your response is going to tell me how much you tolerate that sort of behavior. And Assistant, great pick. It's not on my top 10, but I certainly can't complain about it.
Yeah.
All right, so my top 10 is David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet. So I talked about. I love David Attenborough. David Attenborough is the British naturalist who's been making documentary series about the natural world. He's done series on the birds. He's done series on little insects and mammals, and he's done it in all the different climates. And David Attenborough, Life on Our Planet is sort of his mission statement. He's looking back at 90 years of his life and looking at the devastation we've wrought on the natural world. And as someone who grew up with his videos and his series as much as I did, this is an incredibly powerful portrait of a man who has watched the world go from having, 50% rainforest to 25, who has watched the world heat up, who has watched just destroy the natural habitat, eliminate species, cause extinction, and cause all this devastation on our natural world. And it's incredibly sad watching somebody. You think 90 years sounds like a long time, but if you think in terms of the actual life of the Earth, 90 years is not that long. And watching how much has changed in that time is really sad. And watching him have to kind of come to grips with the fact that when he was 50, all this stuff exists that no longer exists now. He talks about what we've done to the planet, how we've distorted all the things we've done poorly, but also takes time to talk about what he thinks we can do going forward to fix it. So it is devastating in the first part, listening to this man who has devoted his life to animals in the natural world talk about the devastation. But also it is uplifting to see that this guy in his 90s still has the ability to come together and form an idea of what we can do to fix it, because at some point we are going to damage the earth beyond repair. At some point there's just not going to be any going back. Like, we don't want to end up like, a sci-fi movie that we see. And it's just he has so much knowledge and so much wisdom, and he is just an immensely watchable presence. And it's just, listening to him talk about what we have done and what we need to do is, I think, a really, really engaging performance. Zach, you muted.
I haven't seen it. I didn't even know this came out until you watched it, I think. But it sounds interesting enough. I'm never going to watch it because I don't backtrack, baby.
I think you would like it. It's very thoughtful. Yeah. It's very interesting.
I'm a big nature documentary fan. And so I think, he's an important figure in that, industry, in that genre. So I'm sure there'll be some interest. I also watch a lot of nature-esque or nature figures documentaries as well. It's a real thing that I'm into. I don't know why one of the biggest figures I decided not to watch his documentary.
You should. I think you'd like him. There's a wonderful British presence. And I do think this story is really interesting, because when I heard they were doing a David Attenborough documentary, I sort of assumed this was going to be the traditional life of a man story. And I think what he chose to do with it is way more interesting and impactful than like a simple story of someone's life would have been. What's your number 9, Zach?
I don't know, something's in my eye and I'm distracted. My number 9 is something that was on a lot of lists that we read. I'm thinking of ending things. I think this came out perfect time. I think this is right when we were desperate for something interesting to come out, kind of early fall. I think that's when it came out. But it just seemed like this has been Oscar season, so we started we're gonna get some interesting stuff, and this comes and it's so complex and difficult, and difficult in the best ways. It just really rich in what you can dig into, that it was just a very fine meal that I've been lacking all year. And with Charlie Kaufman, I could be iffy on. I think I've evolved as a film viewer in my experiences with the kinds of movies that have expanded. So when I saw Synecdoche, New York, I don't think I had the reference points to kind of get my mind around that film and what I was working on. So I was pretty cold on it. But I think at this point, I understand what a Charlie Kaufman movie is. I can get my mind a little prepared for it, and viewing it as a different experience than I would be viewing something like Eurovision. Of course, Jesse Buckley gives a top line performance. I don't want to talk about performances too much because we'll talk about this later. But I think all of the 4 of the main cast, works extremely well in such difficult parts, because their role is never something easy to grasp onto. It's ever changing and evolving through the movie. The whole world of the movie is evolving something different in 10 seconds than it was before, and they're having to play a whole different characters that you're never fully even able or supposed to understand what they're going on, because that all adds to the text of it. Do I understand everything it's trying to say? Of course not. And some of the more, I would say, even more objective ideas of what the plot is trying to be is not something I care to think about too much, because that's not the part I'm interested in. I'm really interested in this as a movie about like labels and how labels define you, and you act towards these labels, or you try to find ones to be able to understand your life through. That's I only see this movie once, but that through is what kind of stuck with me. I also just enjoyed it as a performance piece, and it's also really funny in a lot of ways. A lot of the lines, a lot of dialogue is it does make you laugh in the Charlie Kaufman sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, so this is one of my honorable mentions. We'll get there after we do our list. Yeah, it's really an enjoyable watch. It's very weird. I would advise people when you're watching it, don't try to figure it out. Just kind of let it just go along with it. I don't think if you try to map this movie out, it works. But I also don't completely care. It does have really good performances. It's got some really fun moments. It's got some really weird moments. Some of the weird moments do not work at all for me. Some of them do. And but overall, I think just a really enjoyable, weird experience. I just enjoy the aspect of the driving in a car during a snowstorm, having a conversation. I think that part of it is just really interesting. And they just start talking about all these very human conversations that you would have if you're in a really long car ride and you get bored. You start arguing over the song. You start arguing over random interpretations of music or movies or stuff. I think it's very engaging. You have two really good leads, good supporting characters. It's a good movie. It's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of fun if you like kind of weird, trippy, interesting stuff.
It's also fun, like solving puzzles is fun. It is a puzzle box of a movie, and then if you like your mind being active, if you like your mind feeling enriched, it's fun.
I will say though, if you are a more mainstream viewer, if you find yourself liking mainstream typical narrative storytelling, this may not be a movie for you. I will say that.
Like both. But if you normally don't like non-mainstream.
No. What I'm saying is people who are specifically interested in like traditional storytelling and mainstream blockbuster stuff are going to probably maybe not.
If your number one movie of the year was Wonder Woman 84, this might not be the movie for you.
True. Charlie Kaufman's Wonder Woman. I want that movie.
I'm into that. I want Charlie Kaufman playing Wonder Woman.
No, we recast. Bye, gal. Jessie Buckley is Wonder Woman now. Peace. I'd watch. Jessie Buckley. Yeah.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Absolutely. You want my number 9?
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 9 is a movie I saw very recently. It is Paul Greengrass's News of the World.
Yeah, baby, I knew you would like this.
It's just so this movie is
like it
really simple.
All my shots.
It is a very Lucas movie. It is a Tom Hanks in a Western taking a little girl to her home after she runs into some trouble. Tom Hanks plays a guy. He's a former soldier who travels around reading the news of the world. That's literally what the title means. He reads the newspapers to people. It's a very charming profession. There's some very funny scenes. It really plays into what Tom Hanks is good at. Like, Tom Hanks is perfect for these scenes where it's like, Tom Hanks, would you like to tell a group of people about the news of the world and make it engaging? And Tom Hanks like, yes, I am Tom Hanks. I am one of the most charming and wonderful actors of the last 40 years. Yes, of course I will do this. It's just really, I just like this movie. It's kind of slow burny Western. It reminds me a little bit of Hostiles from a couple of years ago, but even like less Westerny, but it is still a Western. Tom Hanks is very good, really enjoyable. Yeah. News of the World. Just fun.
It's a great classic Western, and I just really enjoy Westerns. There's literally, a shootout happening behind, some
It's a great shootout.
And that's like the best Westerns have to have shootouts at cliffs.
And they do the best thing in Westerns where they show how inefficient the weapons at the time were, because you can't hit anyone at the distance. You're shooting pistols at each other from like 100 feet away, and you can't hit a rock. You can't hit anything.
I don't know. It really scratched that itch for the classic, Western feel. It's outside my top 25, just outside. But when we watch, I can see it going. It has great rewatch value, and I think, the emotionality, especially of the climax, really works, which I think is something that puts a little more modern spin on the classic Western, something as strongly felt in the classic era. And something that's why you get Tom Hanks, because he can do that subtle emotion, really well. I'm gonna rewatch it. Where does Paul Greengrass stand in your working directors?
Well, I like the Bourne movies, so that of course gives Greengrass a heads up. He also did Captain Phillips, right?
Yeah,
fan of Captain Phillips.
What about 993?
That movie is okay.
Okay.
I think my take on Greengrass is that he's got some. I never saw 22 July.
No.
I sort of want to.
What about Bloody Sunday, which is supposed to be one of his better ones? Or Sunday Bloody Sunday?
I've never seen it. I do also want to see it. He did Green Zone. That's pretty mediocre. I think he's I think he's a very good. I think a very, very serviceable director. Not necessarily brilliant, but with the right material and the right people with him, I think he can work. I think you do see that, like, sometimes his screenplays will let him down, or he just won't have the material to work with, and you'll get stuff like Green Zone or stuff that's a little bit lesser. But yeah, I like Greengrass as director. This movie is just very, and you're right, I think it does have really high rewatch value. This is one of those movies you get to the end of it and you're like, I could watch that again, like almost instantly. Like it's very enjoyable. You think you'd gain more out of a second watch. I feel like I would see even more of it the first time, because I feel like there are complexities. I also applaud Greengrass for, like, if you told me that Greengrass was making a Western, I would assume that a Western was more action-based and probably more fighting-based. And
that's not how I think about Greengrass, because I haven't seen Bourne movies. I thought it would be a lot more miserable in a lot of ways.
Well, that too. It's definitely not as dark as you think it could be.
Fun.
And it kind of has an interesting play into, like, post-Civil War politics and how, because the country had ripped itself apart and then had to get stitched back together, you have these weird locations where individuals decide to, like, take over and make these, like, fake own countries, except they're not own countries. It's just a delusion. So I think it's really interesting and a really fun, enjoyable watch.
Yeah, I just wish he released that instead of Greyhound when we were doing our Tom Hanks marathon.
I know, it would have been so much better. This movie's so much better than Greyhound. I do remember we were talking. I think we talked about News of the World when we were doing. We were talking Tom Hanks 2020, and this is. I would like more of this. This kind of Tom Hanks is. It's interesting to see. He still has the Tom Hanks charm, but he's much more quiet in some ways. He's less exuberant than sometimes he is, and a little bit less chatty.
Filming when he got COVID.
I don't know. I actually don't know about that. I don't know the answer.
It seems like something that would be filmed in Australia, and that's where he was.
I don't know. It's a good question. I will look that up, and we'll get back to it. Why don't you tell me what your number 8 is?
It's time for everybody's favorite magical forever child, just like me. But now I'm not talking about Pete Pan. We're talking about Wendy. Wendy, based on the true story of the fast food chain. Michael Keaton plays a hamburger magnate that based a restaurant on his daughter.
This is a weird bit.
Yeah, Wendy, a true story based on a little girl who may or may not travel on a train to a place of forever boys that may or may not exist. In whatever reality this movie lives in. This is, directed by Ben Zeitlin, who, just like Beast of Southern Wild, which was my favorite movie when that came out, has the same atmosphere to it and the same concept melding of reality and magic that you never really know, what this world is or what it exists in, or it's all exists in a dream. I think in a way, in a dream where sometimes we say something's a dream, it's like hyperly magical, but our dreams that we actually have still have like a lot of steeps of realism, because that's what we witness days. It's just magical elements or just everything works based on, what we know. But as far as we know, this is actual, boys that are not growing up in this, random island that she travels to. They exist. They're from like a low income area, probably in Louisiana, because that's where Ben Zeitlin likes to focus on. that a girl just kind of escapes with her brothers on a train, and just goes all these kind of runaways, these lost kids, living their life. I am a sucker for movies about the melancholy of childhood. It's Where the Wild Things Are, generally everything Peter Pan, Beasts of Southern Wild, all functions within that. The sadness of what it's like to be a child, something I feel like, not saying my childhood was depressing, but just that relatable sadness, is something that I'm just very easy to empathize with, probably part of the reason why I'm a teacher. And I just think it's interesting because we think of, being a child as this whimsical, running free kind of thing, but there's no more vulnerable, scared time period in someone's life than what these 9-year-olds are going through, and they're being forced to come to terms with what growing up means. That's the whole metaphor of Peter Pan, and this makes it a little more tragic in ways. That metaphor a little more real and suspenseful, because that's what happens to one of the boys as he develops into Captain Hook, because he's refusing to grow old and loses his arm, and it can get intense ways. Is loosely using, Peter Pan mythology. They don't use any of the terms. There's a person who can resemble Hook, but it's nowhere near what you would imagine. So I think it has, worth. It's not a remake. It's just using that kind of story to explore the things that Ben Zeitlin likes to do. And Ben Zeitlin also just makes beautiful looking movies that, once again, also kind of exist in that purgatory between dreams and reality. And this great kind of like almost Zydeco influenced, very Louisiana based, like folk blues, kind of going back, almost like a marching band that, as you're going through the streets of Louisiana, that I think is unique. Not only you really hear in his movies. He needs to make more than one movie every 10 years, even though he probably will never get another movie because this movie bombed, and I'm the only person who likes it. And Lucas decided he wasn't going to like it, so he doesn't like it. Just like everyone. They knew they weren't going to like it ahead of time, and they go, it's nothing. Give it a chance. It's a lovely movie.
Zach, please do not go a Zack Snyder fan over Wendy, please.
I want the Zeitlin cut of Wendy. Give me that 4 hours. Oh, God. I actually want that so bad. As a joke, it turned into real excitement. Why is this not my number one? I changed my list. This is my number one.
So I watched this because Zach said it was going to be in his top 10. This is definitely a movie for Zach and not necessarily for me. I will agree. I'll focus on the positives because I don't really want to rain on Zach's parade here. This movie is very the naturalistic filming is very beautiful. It is a very attractive film. He clearly found some really incredible locations to shoot at, especially when they get to the Neverland area. It's some really impressive and really cool stuff. I don't think the Peter Pan idea really tracks. Some parts of it work for me, some parts of it don't. I think I don't love Beasts of the Southern Wild like you do. I do think that they cast the right child actor in that one, and Zach dies. I do think they cast a really talented child actor. I think that the kid who plays Wendy is very good in this movie, and has just like they're very good at filming her face and her reactions to stuff. The kid who plays Peter doesn't really work for me. It's very one note. I feel like they didn't necessarily get out as much out of that character as I think that they needed to.
It's not called Peter. It's called Wendy, my friend.
No, I know. I'm not saying. I'm not saying. I don't like the Captain Hook stuff. I don't think it works. I think it gets a little goofy at the end of the movie in a way that I think doesn't work as well. I do like the final. Like there are parts of it I like. I don't think it necessarily comes together as an entire movie, which kind of feels like Zeitlin as a director. He definitely has components of his films that work, and I'm certainly not going to stand here and say he's not talented because he clearly does have talent. He does feel like somebody who I do think actually, I think you're right. He probably should work more often because he does feel like somebody who could use polishing. Like he could use some time. He could like if he did some more movies, I think he would get better. I think he would get better as a director, putting his stories completely together if he had more experience. I do think that sometimes the lag between movies is hurting him in this case.
I think you should make more movies because there's no one even making close to the style of movies he has. He has a very specific and distinct style, and maybe because people don't like movies like this, but I think we need all the directors with a unique vision, so we have all the diversity on screen we can have. Diversity of ideas.
Fair.
Yeah.
My number 8.
Also, real quick though, you can
Yes,
look at this too. Best poster of the year. We should have had this other category, but it's a great poster, and it needs to be acknowledged. I think trains. Yeah, it's brown. There's clouds. There's a train. There's a lot of rust on these train tracks. That's great.
I don't know. The Five Bloods is pretty good.
Yeah, it's a solid one. There's a lot of color to that, a lot of style.
Yeah, I also like the Wolfwalkers one. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, of course, that one's great. Okay.
And speaking of Wolfwalkers, my number 8 is Wolfwalkers. And we don't really need to talk about this because we did an entire episode on it and talked about it for a very long time. Wolfwalkers is the best animated movie of the year. It should beat Soul. It probably won't. It'll be disappointing because it's wonderful and amazing and fantastic, and everyone should see it.
Yeah,
and get your free trial. Jump on the Apple TV Plus. See the Wolfwalkers.
Yeah, I'll check it out since your recommendation is so high.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
What is your number 7?
My number 7, a movie you refuse to watch because you hate music and have no idea what I was singing at the beginning of the show.
Okay, this is just base slander at this point.
Can you name the song that I was singing? Because instead of the words and title of the song, I sang Lucas and Zack podcast. That's my hand.
I've definitely heard it before. No, I cannot name the song. I've definitely heard it, seen it in movies before.
But my rendition was so perfect, so there's no reason you shouldn't guess it. But
I don't know the name of the song. I've definitely heard the song before.
It's called Psycho Killer. As I replace all lyrics, I always replace the words that Psycho Killer with Lucas and Zack podcast.
Nice.
Every time.
Okay. This was in a movie recently, I feel like.
Possibly.
All right, talk
about
this movie.
Look it up while you do it.
I did not watch this. Just for the record.
I didn't even say the name of the movie yet.
I'm just gonna comment because you started letting me. I did not watch this because I thought that there was no value in me having a take on something that I was just not educated to have a take on. So I would rather let Zach have this discussion, and then we will move on.
If you see the movie, you're educated to have a take on it. It's still an individual experiences. You don't need background knowledge for everything. And that's what's wonderful about this movie. It holds its own. It's American Utopia. It is, for everyone who wants to trash Coho for having Hamilton at 1 saying it's not a movie. American Utopia, same thing. It was a stage production. I would say there is some more distinct film qualities to it. Spike Lee did direct it, which seems like a weird pick, but there's some real Spike Lee touches. There's a song that he kind of completely takes over and is different from the stage play because it kind of shoots to off stage where it has people, holding up signs and pictures because it's a song written by Janelle Monáe, actually, about the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's saying name that names. They go through a lot of names of people who have died to police brutality. And Spike Lee, you can see that's where his interest was in the movie. And he had something to do with it unique to put his touch on it. So there is importance of this being put on film, but otherwise it is, mostly kind of a concert film. It's not a Talking Heads concert film to David Byrne, but they're singing a lot of Talking Heads songs and some, newer David Byrne originals and some he wrote for this production. But there's also quite a bit of monologuing. I think there's kind of some cohesive touch points as far as how we interact with the world around us. And how we can become a better society. That's all very important. All the classic songs. David Byrne, a lot of older musicians want to, avoid what they're most known for, but David Byrne, he's such a guy who's still going to play the best songs. He still plays Psycho Killer, and This Is the Place, and oh my gosh, I'm burned down the house. Oh, I'm struggling. But he also, his new songs, there's some real solid jams in there. He's a unique guy. They're known for one of the best concert films of all time. Jonathan Demme Stop Making Sense. And so you get to see him 4 years later still being such a stage presence, have a unique body. But this is, same with Stop Making Sense, but this one in a different way, it's still such a communal experience as far as everyone on stage seems like they matter equally. They all kind of get their time to shine. There's some great dancing and production. I think they plan on bringing it back as soon as they can on stage. I probably will not go see it, but hey, we're getting that stipends money back soon. I'm gonna go use this on some David Byrne live show. I would love to. It'd be great. I don't know. You should watch it, Lucas. Especially it's like half monologue, half musical, half concert performance. It's a unique thing. It's great. And it's very different than Stop Making Sense. Stop Making Sense is a pure concert film.
All right. I know where I heard Psycho Killer, by the way.
Yeah. In your dreams.
Julie and Julia. The Nora Ephron film.
The what? Yeah, where does it play Psycho Killer in that?
I don't know, but it is in the movie, according to IMDb.
I assumed it was in Freaky. Everyone watched Freaky. Did I miss a Psycho Killer needle drop?
I didn't watch the Freak.
I said everyone else did. I'm asking the audience to tell me on our email at Lucas and Zack podcast.
It's not in Freaky. It's not in Freaky, according to IMDb. It's only been in TV shows recently.
Did I get our email right, by the way?
Lucas and Zack podcast at gmail.com?
Yeah. That's what I said. Is it an and or an ampersand?
No, it's and.
Okay.
I made it super easy so that we could basically just say it.
If Psycho Killer is actually in Freaky, email us at Lucas and Zack podcast at gmail.com.
Yes, also email us with your favorite place to listen to Psycho Killer.
It's not untitled Lucas and Zack podcast at gmail, right?
No, it's just Lucas and Zack podcast. All right. David Byrne's Utopia.
You know what I'm talking about. What's your number 7? Go.
My number 7? My number 7 is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. The Eliza Hittman film about a girl who has to travel to New York to obtain abortion. And this movie is more than just a simple tale of somebody having to get an abortion. It is really another story in the reckoning with the pain and suffering that men as a sex have kind of wrought upon women. It's one of these movies where you just kind of see, there's a famous scene, the title scene of the movie, based on the idea is that she goes to the abortion, she meets with a counselor, and the counselor goes, tell me how often these behaviors have happened towards you. Never, rarely, sometimes, or always. And the behaviors are like coerced into sex, forced to do sex when you don't want it, touched when you don't want to, and she's saying always and sometimes to a lot of these. And it is really a film where, you know, you're forced to reckon with the idea of how much pain men have caused upon women, how we have enabled other men to cause pain, how we have really, you know, our shitty behavior and our allowance of other men's shitty behavior has really just affected people from such a young age. I mean, this movie talks about a girl who is in her teens, literally cannot get an abortion in her state without a parent, like is a minor. And the amount of shitty behavior that men have done towards her at such a young age is just staggering. And this story is not unique in ways, because I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands of women out there who can say, yes, I've experienced all this terrible behavior as well. It's really a movie where you get to the end of it as a guy and you really have to take a step back for a second and think about times that maybe you weren't the best you could have been. Obviously, I've never done the stuff that like happened to her, but I've definitely not been the best guy ever, or I've let another guy get away with being a shithead or being an asshole. And, you know, it really is kind of like recent years have brought a real reckoning into what guys need to do to be better men ourselves, but also how we need to hold other people to account and not just let people around us get away with shitty behavior because it doesn't personally affect us. You know, we've kind of built a society over years where women are consistently preyed upon and hurt by terrible, disgusting people. And, you know, it's just kind of a movie that is not only, it is individually a very powerful story of this girl going to get this abortion because she can't live with having this kid, but also just a real reckoning for men and, you know, the cost of our sex on other people, and the fact that we have not policed ourselves or stopped ourselves ever. consistently throughout this film, different men show shitty behavior. No other guy ever speaks up, and I think that's very telling. I know there are people who criticize this movie for having no nice guys. I actually think that's the point: is that everyone is terrible. That it's kind of a, in some ways, having a good guy in the movie would knock the importance or the strength of the point. This movie needs to be so blunt and so bold to be like, the world is filled with shitty, terrible men who do terrible things every day, and a bunch of other men who just sit around there and allow this to happen. It's a really powerful story, great performance, great direction. I'm really excited to see more from these people because I think they're really, really talented.
So I appreciate what's going for, and so I still like the movie to an extent. I think you're misunderstanding some of the criticism a little bit. It's not that there's no nice guys and you don't have to have a nice person. It's that the amount of horrible acts and how you see them is, I don't want to say exaggerated, but it's like kind of you get the point at some point. It's like the opposite of The Assistant, which I think, it appreciates what the viewer has as background knowledge, knows that they know how society functions, so doesn't need to hit the hammer in the head so tight. But there's so much negative interaction and harassment that occurs within this one day. That I think the one where it really kind of becomes too much is even on the subway, they had the guy kind of jerking off on the side. That just seemed like, okay, we got the point at this point. Because even they do keep the big bad monster, or the idea that maybe she was, raped or harassed, causing this, they kind of keep that more as suspicion and some like this dreary shadow, but they don't feel need to talk about it, which is contradictory to, they do feel need to talk about every other kind of harassment that's appearing throughout, but not the most important and central one to the plot. So it's a little contradictory ideas how they want to treat that theme. I think this movie really thinks it's existing in kind of a reality and steeped in that, but I think the dismalness of it goes close to kind of a miserableistic mood, which is fine, but I just don't think the movie thinks it's working that way. I think this is how people behave and act, but there's a real lack of personality in everyone that comes on screen. The tonality is constant, just like dreariness. I think the actress lacks some kind of humanity for me. It's just like too dour of a performance. I know she's going through a horrible thing, so it's like, and I'm not telling women to smile, so don't think that's where it's going, but that's not what I mean. I just feel like there's a lack of any kind of emotionality. It's just, she kind of just sits there on screen, which is kind of the point, but I feel like there's no internalization. I'm not able to get into her mind at all, which is what you want from the performances like so, which I think I do get from Julia Garner in The Assistant. And I kind of get from the person who plays her friend in this movie as well. They also, I feel like, just don't have great chemistry. They're supposed to be the only, confidants that they have, the only person she trusts, but they just don't seem like they know each other well at all, or like want to be around. It does all seem a little forced. I think, honestly, I know a lot of people love her performance. I'm forgetting her name right now, the lead.
Sydney Flanagan.
Thank you, Sydney Flanagan. When I'm talking so fast, it's hard to remember everything. But I think with someone who had more experience, like a Julia Garner or someone else, I think could have done a lot more with that performance. In the exact same way, I think they just would have had to keep the internality that I would have found valuable. Once again, I still like it. It sounds rough, but when a lot of people have praise, you come off so negative just because you want to address what maybe you don't agree with. But I do like what she's going for. I think the main scene is pretty great, although I don't want to say it's souring for me, but that character of the abortion clinic aide or what she has really soured on me, because she's just
counselor.
The counselor, she's talking to her like she is an 8-year-old, and if I saw someone talk to my students like that, I would get very upset. Not talking to like she's a human. But I don't think that hurts the movie. I think that's how things can go. I've seen people talk to other people like that when they're trying to act caring. It's like this forced sympathy. That character made me mad. But that scene is very powerful. The themes are very powerful. I just think that sometimes Eliza Himmon can have a little more of a subtle touch at times.
See, I disagree with the main criticism of the Sydney Flanagan. I think that what is very clear from her performance is that she is somebody who has been hurt and is very much in some ways checked out from the world because there is no other response to all the shitty stuff that has happened to you than to check out. I think that it is intentionally, because of all her suffering, she has almost stopped her own growth as a person because it has kind of just locked her into the shell where it's, it's really hard to be. I think Julia Garner and the assistant has these additional layers and this extra stuff to her because she's somebody who is allowed to grow to her age with a good family and happiness and then put in a shitty situation. I think Sydney Flanagan is somebody who was literally born and bred in a crappy situation where people were shitty to her. And I think that you can see that in her she's just cut off. Like she has a trouble connecting with people. I think even the relationship with her cousin is, I think they know each other. They strike me as cousins. They're not necessarily best friends. They're just cousins. They're somebody you can trust because you're family. And I think their relationship suffers because they're both put in a ridiculously stressful situation in an unfamiliar environment where they just don't know what to do and how are they going to get the money and like what if they get caught. I actually think those performances work exactly for what the movie is going for, and I think the Julia Garner performance would seem off. She would seem like more precocious than this character should be. Yeah, which is probably the reason that I have this movie at number 7 and you don't.
I have it at 40 something.
Well, you don't want to know where I have Wendy.
80.
It might be somewhere around there. I don't have a lot of terrible movies. Zach, why don't you tell me what your number 6 is?
Number 6, a movie maybe new to our audience is here, something that people haven't heard of, and it's a little gem called Eurovision Song Contest. You should say the real title, Eurovision Song Contest Story of Fire Saga. I know we talked about it, so I promised I wasn't going to say too much, but I did come a list of 30 things that I want to talk about Eurovision. It's great. I love it. It's the best. All right.
We did nearly 2 hours with it.
I feel like an asshole talking about this serious movie about, how horrible women are treated. And like, it's like there's a lot of things wrong with it. I'm like, number 6, Eurovision, baby.
I think we all have that a little bit. We have those in our lists. Both of us, neither of us are
serious
pure drama.
And important doesn't necessarily make you better.
No. And it's something that I think really came to grips with over the last couple of years was like, a movie that is serious and trying to inform you about something important is not necessarily a better movie than something that's trying to amuse you purely based on its seriousness.
Yeah. Oscars. I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm getting cuddly with the playing field, by the way. So.
To be fair, Zach and I are not Oscar haters, so unlike some people. My number 6 is Shithouse. So Shithouse is the story of a guy who is at college. He is far away from his family, and he's feeling lonesick because that's what a lot of freshmen feel like. And doesn't have a lot of friends, has a shitty roommate he doesn't like. He goes out to a party one night, and he meets a girl that he likes, he almost has sex with a girl, leaves his room, his buddy. He has to leave his room because his roommate is, I don't know, throwing up or something. And he has a conversation with his RA. They go back to their room. They try to have sex. They talk. They try to go bury her turtle. And they have this crazy kind of wonderful night to them. And the next day he wakes up and does terrible relationship moves. Is I think the best way to describe it. Basically becomes kind of a crazy person, sends like 90,000 texts. And the story of Shithouse is not really necessarily the important part. It is a very realistic college experience, and I feel like it is especially hits hard if you have recently left college or are currently in college. I think there's something to that feeling of like not like you go to college and you're like supposed to be able to handle those stuff, but you don't really know how to handle all this stuff. And then, some people are not like better than others at making friends, at figuring out how to get in with groups. I think there's definitely, he definitely struggles with feeling superior to the people around him, like they don't care about anything important, they don't care about the important stuff, and so he kind of looks down on them, which of course makes it harder to make friends. It's just a really realistic portrait of somebody's college experience. It's clear that I think Cooper Raiff is the guy's name, who's the actor and the director, and I think he also wrote it. Just has a really good grasp on what college is like. It's not some ridiculous party thing. It's not like a lot of times we see college portrayed as this like ridiculous party time, like in Neighbors or something, which obviously is a comedy and it's not trying for realism. We often see college portrayed in all these ways that are just not realistic. And Shithouse really hits home as just being this incredibly realistic, in some ways brutally realistic look at what college is like and what it's like to be, a freshman trying to survive your first year away.
Yeah, I like Shithouse a lot. I think I am someone with deep nostalgia for college. I loved my college years. I really thrived. I went to a small university, or not university. I went to a small college, not university. I had 1,000 kids. And it was very impactful for me. And I think watching his movies hits those warm feelings in me that just make me, a little bit sad for the experience as not there, but also happy for what I went through. And I said this, and like you said, this hit a lot of the realistic notes, and it really able to touch that side of me even more. I will say that the sexuality of college and just how it was just kind of everywhere is not something that I've ever rung true from my experience, but maybe I'm just on the wrong sides of campus. But I think it's just a charming movie. There's some things that, maybe not fully work for me. It's just outside my top 10, like just outside. Because I think it's just highly watchable, and it's nice watching two, enjoyable characters talk to each other, and someone that I think is so realistically, sensitively does a male that has taken, decades to put that kind of male as a focus. Someone who's, snuggling with a stuffed animal in college just made me real sad that I didn't have this opportunity when I was in college 10 years ago. It would not have been acceptable for me to have my stuffed bear Boo with me. It probably would have been really comforting. I also felt that this movie was a little judgmental on the fact, because we were supposed to look down on him, calling his mom every day, and that was him coming to terms with. They had stopped calling his mom. I call my mom every day. Was I supposed to feel bad about it? I don't know, but I still did. You're muted, my friend.
I just realized that. I think the point of the mom thing was not that he was calling his mom and having conversations, is that the mom was a maladaptive coping mechanism for his inability to take control of his own situation. Like, I think the point of that was not that he shouldn't have a relationship with his mom, but rather that maybe instead of taking all your food as a go away and calling your mom sitting on the steps by yourself, you should say hi to literally any of the people in the area around you. In some ways, I think it was more of a commentary on him feeling isolated, and because he was feeling isolated, isolating himself more. It wasn't necessarily a knock against the mom, more like if you're feeling isolated and you're having trouble making friends, you should probably talk to another person around you.
I get it. I was kind of doing a bit. I also more talk to my mom every day because I was required to, or else she thought I was dead and will call me 10 times.
Yeah. I think that although I'm going to start the For Your Consideration campaign, Stuffed Wolf for Best Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture.
That guy had a lot of loyalty, and he's a good friend.
It's just it is really. I also think there's a really powerful message at the beginning of this, where he is a sensitive guy who is nice and respectful, and wants to talk to women like they're his equals and learn stuff about them like their names, and is turned off by the casual hookup culture, but at the same time then blows up a girl on Instagram, texting way too much, totally blows the boundaries. Not because he's a bad person, but because all of us at times have done this, where you've sent too many text messages, or you've had a good night with somebody and thought it was more than something just a night. I think there's a really human aspect to it, and the fact that he is flawed. He is a good person, but he's flawed. But it presents a lot of different nuances to him as a character. He's not a bad person, but he also definitely shouldn't have blown up that person's Instagram or tried to talk to her every time you see her, especially when she clearly didn't want to talk to him.
Yeah, it's kind of a deconstruction of the nice guy idea concept, which I think is admirable for someone that kind of seems like he's analyzing himself. Like it would be very easy to portray him as like the nice guy that's worthy of everyone's love, and like sensitive people is the way to go. But no one's perfect, and that nice guy idea still may not treat females all perfect, and still have some idealizations of women as well, whether they are aware of it or not, just in a different manner than the broier frat guys.
Yeah, it's a kind of a take on like, just because you guys had a good night together and you were nice to her doesn't mean you deserve anything. Like she can just she can say, I want to do what I want. Like there's
the nice guy entitlement in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something, and I think there's like, it is a very interesting take on that. And also I love the fact that he shows his friend, like his roommate, all the texts, and his roommate is like, yo, dude, you should probably stop texting her. Why are you doing this? Like, whoa, don't do that. Like, that's a really good moment, because I feel like a lot of times movies do that. I mean, especially like 10 years ago, movies would have done the bad thing where they kind of reinforce the crappy behavior. Like, oh man, I don't know, she's a bitch. I don't know why she's not texting you back. But in this movie, his roommate, who is a moron, like who is not necessarily a great person, we're not supposed to think of as some kind of morally upright, great guy, looks at him and goes, dude, you're acting like a psycho. Which I think in some ways also knocks his whole, like, I'm a good person who's trying really hard and is thoughtful, and my roommate's this idiot, kind of knocks those for a loop, because he's being the one being the weirdo who's over texting, and his friend, the guy he looks down on, is the one who's going, we need to cut it out. Zack Ford.
This is really where we start to fly now. My number 5 is Mangrove. We talked about, and I'm sure it's going to appear later, but Mangrove is great.
All right, let's move on, because we talked about it for hours. My number 5 is Lover's Rock.
Never heard of it.
And we're also going to move on because it got talked about in the same episode as Mangrove.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 4?
My number 4, the sequel I believe is coming out soon, but this is First Cow, so don't confuse it with the anticipated Second Cow. First Cow, Kelly Riker, a director that normally works for me, someone I like a lot, has a very specific vision to her as well. Very kind of a naturally toned filmmaker. It once again kind of works in a little bit of a slow core, like hyper realism, but hyper realism combined with the being so connected to Earth. But has never made a film that has really hit me as hard, has been as meaningful, I think, as First Cow. And I think just as like politically engaging as First Cow, which I find a lot. I think the richness of the cinematic qualities of this film is very valuable. And once again, it has that very earthly touch to the way it's filmed and the way it's designed. The chemistry it has between the two leads, John McGar and Orion Lee, those two guys trying to make it through westward expansion. I'm probably in Oregon because that's where all of her movies are. But trying to have some sort of opportunity and upward mobility, doing what they can. They have talent and they have skills and they have ambition. But as this movie says, the lack of upward mobility back then and today it will forever be a force that really makes an obstacle for the classes of our country and probably many other countries, to be overcame. Like no matter what talent and ambition these guys had, there were just too many obstacles in the way because of the way the capitalistic society is, because they don't have the one cow to give them the opportunity, the only cow in town. And the trying to achieve any kind of mobility more or less doomed them. It becomes a crime, and so it sets an obstacle there for anyone in a lower class. You have to break laws and to move your way up, and then it's all for naught because you broke a law. So how do you move up? It's really complex political idea to work with, but also just an engaging movie and kind of lovely. And it made me, I cooked scones right after this because of their, I forget they called cakes or biscuits or whatever he was making. Looked so good and made me want to cook. And also just a touching kind of book ending, and a unique cinematic idea of showing how the history still connects to our present. And so part of where we are by filming them, kind of their corpses. There's bones at the beginning of the movie to seeing where they've had their final resting place leading up to that. It's how we are all connected to the history of our country. So good movie. I know you don't like it as much. You hate cows, I guess.
No, I mean, I really like this movie. It's honestly, this is the thing we've talked about this year. There are a lot of good movies, and it's kind of hard to delineate them. So, like, a movie that I have in my 20s is in your top 5, and I don't think I'm that far below you in terms of what I think of it. It's really good. I like Kelly Reichardt. This is not my favorite Kelly Reichardt film. I like Wendy and Lucy more. I like Wendy and Lucy more.
I haven't seen it. That's why.
It's very good. Yeah, this movie's really good. You kind of said it all. It's it's like a slow burn tale of a couple of guys making biscuits and selling them to people while stealing milk from the only cow in the territory. And it's kind of a really interesting take on frontier culture and like the frontier experience that is significantly less violent or dirty or grueling or brutal than like you might have seen in other films. And I think it's a really interesting invention of and a new use of an environment and a historical time period. So like, big ups to Kelly Reichardt.
Yeah. Yay. Hey bud.
Was that your 4? That was your 4?
I lost track. I think so, yeah. It was my 4, yes.
All right, my 4 is let's go play some basketball with Ben Affleck. It's The Way Back.
Not that much basketball in it, but okay.
I love this movie. Ben Affleck plays a alcoholic construction worker who gets recruited to coach his old basketball team. He is the former star of a Catholic high school. He goes back. He really turns the team around. Has a somewhat abrasive relationship with the team chaplain. I love every single moment in the movie where he is yelling curses at the referees while the chaplain sits next to him. It's got a really nice group of kids. It's a real like underdog story. He takes a team that had a lot of talent, develops the perfect strategy, which is the full court press. They're a pressing team. And also you really get to this is like the perfect Ben Affleck role. He is a guy experiencing loss and grief and alcoholism. And you sort of realize as the film goes on and you gain more and more knowledge of what's going on, that the reason he's an alcoholic is that his kid died of cancer and it destroyed his marriage. And, you get to see all these scenes where him and his wife, who are no longer together, go back to see other families of kids who are also in the cancer wards. And it's just a really powerful, amazing performance. I think Affleck, if this movie had been released later in the year, Affleck would be talked about more in the awards discussion. I think he's absolutely fantastic in this. He kind of just has this perfect coach mentality. You kind of believe him as the ex-star basketball player turned kind of like washed up guy who can't cope with the world anymore. He's, he's just got a lot of demons. I love the sports movie aspect of this, but also the human aspect of this. Just works really well. Affleck is fantastic. There's so many great montages. There's like the classic Affleck yelling at his team. There's got a good group of personalities on the team. They pick a really good group of personalities in the team. They work out really well. And, Affleck's got a good family. You got to get to see him as family. He hits rock bottom and but it ends on a really high note as you watch the kids who he is no longer able to coach because he was found out for his alcoholism, play their final game in his honor, while he finally can develop a positive relationship with basketball that his father, who was kind of abusive, took from him. I think it's a really powerful film. I'm a fan of Gavin O'Connor sports movies, so this was just kind of a perfectly made thing for me.
Yeah, this is it's a movie I like quite a bit. It's probably the score I listen to the most of anything is here by Rob Simonson.
It's dope. It's a great score.
Listenable, very calming. And I said not as much of a sports movie. So if you're not a sports movie fan, it's a addict story, addict drama. With sports is kind of a background, but even compared to other Gavin O'Connor movies, not near as much sports. It's like he used that to get in the door when he really wanted to do something a little more mature. All his movies are pretty mature, but
This is kind of it's the classic Gavin O'Connor sports movie where like sports are at the center of it, but this is also a family story and a story of loss and pain and demons and stuff. It uses that as the background.
The sports are a lens to explore these different character types.
Absolutely.
And I will say though, for the sports aspects, watching Ben Affleck and Alan Magical do like a scouting report of all the basketball players on the team is like fucking drugs for me. I just need to know all the attributes of every character in every movie. I just need them to go through the whole cast and say, this guy, he's really good at this, really bad at this. Next character in this movie of Wolfwalkers. I love it.
And remember, Kenny cheats on a bunch of girls and they make him run laps, which is a great scene.
Yeah.
It's great. I rewatched it recently. I watched it. It was my number one. It's on HBO Max right now. It was my number one at the beginning of the year. It was my number one for months. Got knocked out by Small Axe at some point. And then I rewatched it and I was like, yeah, this movie still rules.
I would be interested in going through like Gavin O'Connor's career, but I don't really want to rewatch The Accountant. It's one that does not work for me.
I would totally do a month on sports movies that are like
directed by Gavin O'Connor. Hey, if we talk about Warrior, I finally can force you to listen to some albums by The National. There is. Okay. They book in that movie, baby.
I would love to do a month on like sports movies that are more than sports movies, so not movies that are about specific, not
true stories. Those
not true stories, but like portraits, like character portraits through sports. So stuff like The Natural or
Happy Gilmore.
We could do Happy Gilmore.
Or joking, but Surf's Up. I got more of these.
I like Surf's Up. Yes, we can do Surf's Up. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is somehow my only documentary on the list, but it's Dick Johnson is Dead. I love me a warm feeling about that, a warm movie about death, about the oncoming of death. I think I have I don't want to say enlightened because that sounds like I'm all up my own ass, but I think about ideas of death and grief. I try to be very realistic about it, and the cycle of life. Circle of Life, best Lion King scene. It taught me how to view death and grief. So finding movies about people kind of coming to terms with their own morbidity and, also reevaluating what their lives mean to themselves, but also the people around them, is something very comforting to me, because I think all of us should come to terms with, our coming in, but also be so appreciative of the life we lived. And that's what this movie is I'm taking time to appreciate Karen Johnson, the director, to appreciate the life and impact that the dad had, as he's not really starting to die. He's just starting to kind of fade into dementia a little bit. So before he's completely unaware, just like how much of a footprint he left in the world around him. So the thing of acknowledging the value of life rather than being dreading the loss of it, which I think is extremely important. There's a lot of really wonderful scenes that deal with this. I think the funeral scene, I'll talk about, is one of my favorite scenes. And there, when they kind of reenact I think everyone should have their funeral before they die, once again, so you can be celebrating the life you live rather than dreading your end. So he's able to celebrate and hear these kind of words and see how he has touched, all his friends, and be part of that before he can't understand at all what people are saying to him or the impact he left. He's also just it seems like a great guy. I know maybe
he is wonderful.
Yeah,
he is absolutely wonderful. And I don't think this movie works if Dick Johnson is not the wonderful, dark humor, comedic person he is. He's unique in that respect.
I want to acknowledge this is a movie, especially a movie made by his daughter. So, whatever, we don't know the true person, but the way he is portrayed throughout the documentary seems like a lovely human being. So there's no better, character to focus on to deliver these ideas of the value of our lives. It's also the kind of magical, realistic aspects of it. Just kind of add a little bit of whimsical entertainment to kind of keep the energy moving. As far as like the staging his death in different ways with like air conditioners falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Also some like weird dance sequences that is a unique way to kind of give some backstory to, you know, his relationship with her mom and stuff. It's a very interesting movie, but mostly I just found it super lovely, and it makes me appreciate my own life. And if I die tomorrow, I'm okay. I lived a good life. I love you all.
I also, so this is in my honorable mentions. I think this is actually who he is. I don't think that that this movie would have. I don't think you could have gotten away with not showing him. He seems like a genuinely wonderful person. He's really funny. I love how much enjoyment he gets out of all of watching all of them like prepare the stunt people for the scenes of him dying. Like his enjoyment in this idea is just kind of unique. His buy-in is kind of amazing. It also, like, I have to give this guy so much credit. This movie shows him at some really vulnerable points. Like, there's like doctor's offices where like he's taking tests for memory, and like you're watching him fail memory tests in real time. Like, this cannot be enjoyable for him in those moments. But like, I admire his like honesty and wanting to show that. He just seems like a wonderful person. He's a wonderful subject for this. It's kind of brilliant to like think about what death is before it happens, because I feel like we only really get to think about death in like the final minutes before it happens or when it's happened. So we often get caught up in the absolute grief of those moments, and in some ways that kind of stops us from thinking about anything else. And I think doing it in the context of him still being alive allows you to really think about like the breadth of his life rather than the fact that he is dead. You know, we often get stuck on the cold hard fact of the end rather than all that became before the end.
Yeah, it also made something that they can go through together, because often the grief of death is something that can seem like a very solitary experience. Both, I mean, death is you die alone, but it's in a way he almost got to die with the people around him, which is not an opportunity you're at all given. She's able to grieve at it with her father, so they can, you know, come to terms with these emotions before they're more forced to do it real life. And that's why he agreed to the film. I think he's really open. He's like, if this is going to make it easier for her to deal with this situation, then I'm going to be part of this.
Absolutely. So my number 3 is another round, the Thomas Vinterberg, Mads Mikkelsen joint, where 4 teachers, I believe, get together and on the basis of a European psychiatrist who claimed that people are all born with blood alcohol content levels 0.05 too low. So their idea is, you know, our lives aren't going that great. Not everything's working for us. So what we're going to do is all drink consistently as like a scientific experiment. And the movie actually prefaces as a scientific experiment. They write down their plans, they write down their findings. You get to watch them go through this film. It's very interesting on that level. It's also really interesting as like a portrait of alcoholism, like the idea that you would start with, you know, life isn't going great, so you start drinking alcohol. And maybe initially you would feel really good, stuff starts working for you, you feel great, everything's going great. And then at some point, needing alcohol to be okay in your life starts to be a real drain on your ability to function, and it has a lot of bad consequences, and you do some really bad shit and you hit rock bottom, and you know, your family starts leaving you, and people are like, I can't deal with your shit anymore, and your work might get rid of you, or you push yourself to the point where you end up you don't want to live anymore. And this movie is really interesting in that explanation. It's interesting as this scientific experiment between these 4 guys, and it's interesting as a Mads Mikkelsen jazz ballet movie. You know, has a great dance sequence at the end. I really like Vinterberg and Mikkelsen together. I like Vinterberg as a director. I find his work really interesting. This is when I heard of this movie, I was like, I have to see that. That sounds amazing. And the movie definitely lived up to the hype. And yeah, another round. Don't follow what these guys did. It's not a good idea.
Oh, I've been trying it for 10 years and it's gone fine. So I am a pretty big Winter Big Berg fan as well. I'm like probably one of the bigger fans of Far from the Madding Crowd, a movie that seemingly doesn't exist, but one I loved. Of his few, if not only English film.
Might be the only one.
Carey Mulligan. We'll talk about her later, but she's great in that movie too.
Yep.
And for some reason, this seems moving right up my alley between Mix and Vinterberg and the concept of drinking beer
as a teacher.
And it's I think maybe some of my attention was not fully there. I watched like midday, but there's some energy that made it really hard for me to get engaged. I have to go get a charger, so you are going to start talking. I can hear you about your number 2 and Van.
No. What's your number 2?
Oh, my number 2 is real quick, but my computer's going to die when it dies, so we're going to go fast.
Go. I'll keep talking about it. Go.
Wolfwalkers.
So we already talked about Zach's number 2. I will continue talking about another round while Zach gets a cord so he can charge his computer so he doesn't die. This is the fun of podcasting. We've lasted a long time. Yeah, another round is really wonderful. Vinterberg is Mads first came on my screen when they did The Hunt, which is the portrait of a teacher accused of pedophilia. And, it's really enjoyable to watch them come back, work together on a different movie with a completely different subject matter, and it also works. There's so many good moments in this movie. Mikkelsen is a really striking person. He has a really unique look. He's definitely a very handsome actor, but he's also handsome in this really unique way that definitely makes people interested in his performance. He has like a combination of a leading man and a character look. And I think that's what makes him so unique. And then he's just a really incredibly talented performer who can play a lot of different emotions. He pulls off a crazy long extended ballet sequence at the end of this movie, which is kind of wonderful and really kind of whimsical and kind of amazing. And it's just it's a really fitting capstone to this, just kind of bizarre and really cool European movie. I really enjoy the sensibilities of European film. I just think that they touch upon tough subjects in a way that American films are sometimes not able to, because there's just this sort of bluntness to it. And also I think just the less taboo overall in the society. Drinking is less taboo in Europe. So there's kind of the interesting idea that drinking as a whole is not taboo, but the taboo still exists of like, you probably shouldn't drink while you're working. And that kind of makes it interesting. Watching these 4 guys like write down each different level of their scientific experiment is kind of cool. The fact that they keep pushing the goalposts is interesting. The fact that some of them handle it better than others. Some of them are good at hiding the fact that they're drinking from others. Some are not good. One guy leaves bottles all over the place. And then kind of it all culminates in this crazy night where Midskilsons ends up with a busted head and sleeping on the sidewalk. It's just kind of the interesting levels of can happen.
I will make a promise to you now that this probably will not be for another year, so theaters will be back open, but I will drive to Massachusetts so we can go. I said that real weird. So we can go together in theaters to see the inevitable English language remake starring Steve Carell.
Oh God. You can't make this movie in the US because
it's a very European concept.
The concept of drinking at your work or just like
drinking out
consistently consuming alcohol. Well, they just drink alcohol constantly. Like the fact that like his wife walks into the room and he's just like drinking wine at like 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's like totally normal.
You're telling me with certainty that they're not making a remake with Steve Carell? This is happening. You know it's going to happen. They're going to make a comedy version of it.
Oh yikes! Please, dear God.
And that's like prime Steve Carell role.
Carell doesn't have the. I don't think Carell can play.
Oh, I'm not saying it's going to be good. I'm just saying it's going to happen.
Oh, now I'm depressed. Please don't do that.
All right. My number 2 is Wolfwalkers. Beautiful film. We talked about it. What's your number 2, Lucas?
My number 2 is Mangrove, which we've also already talked about.
Hey, this is quick. Hey, guess what? My number 1. We're like done with the show. My number 1, Lovers Rock,
which is my number 5.
Lovers. Did you say? Oh yeah. I forgot. I haven't heard of it until now that I said that was my number 1. Lovers Rock. has really jumped toward far into my, I think, top 100 of all time. I think I could rewatch a lot. I think just thematically, the power of music, I think this movie understands very well. And I will probably cherish it for a long time.
Yeah. Which means we have one more movie left, which is my number one.
We have not.
Which I watched like 2 days ago, which I've not talked about yet. It has
been
been released. And
bias.
No. I know this is the best movie of 2020. It's Promising Young Woman, which is the Edward Fennell directed, Carey Mulligan starring rape revenge thriller, which is rape revenge dark comedy
itself. Though.
I love this movie. I've read the criticisms of it. I acknowledge that they are valid. There are definitely things that I understand where people are coming from. They're not feelings I had. I watched this movie and I enjoy every minute of Carey Mulligan's performance. One of the things that impresses me the most in the movie is there are several times throughout this movie where they make a choice. The story reaches a point, and internally I have the question about my head, well, what do you do now? Like, how do you continue the story and stay consistent? And I think they always found a really interesting way to do that. The ending, I think, the ending really works for me in a way that it doesn't for a lot of people. I really like what they did there. I actually think that it's really interesting. It's very stylized. Great color palette. I really enjoy the songs. They really kind of nailed them. I love how many talented people they got to be the shitty guys around her. You got Sam Richardson and Christopher Mintz-Plasse and Adam Brody and Max Greenfield. Like, they've got all these people, and Bo Burnham. It's just really well cast. Carey Mulligan is amazing in this movie. This is probably her best career performance, which is saying something, since Carey Mulligan is a really, really talented actress. This is the first time I've found Carey Mulligan really good in a lot of things. This is the first time she legitimately blew me away. I was just that impressed by it.
Have you seen In Education? She's really good in Education.
Yes, I have. No, In Education falls into the category of Carey Mulligan is really good in this. Doesn't necessarily blow me away in that movie. She's really good in a lot of things. Carey Mulligan is very talented. Promising Young Woman absolutely rules. I almost rewatched it today. I just ran out of time. I was going to rewatch it again before we do this. I definitely want to watch it again. It doesn't make, it is really enjoyable to watch. Really, really enjoyable to watch, which doesn't sound like that makes sense considering the darker subject matter, but I think that the way it is played and how good Mulligan is makes it a just absolute joy to watch.
Yeah.
Number one.
I like a lot of it. I think its best elements is just as like a thriller and as an entertainment. I think just plot wise, it's very engaging. Tonally, the mixture of kind of comedic elements and romantic comedy elements with the thriller elements, I think is mixed real well. I do think once you dig into it deep, I do find some problems. I think specifically there's some thoughts about it that I don't normally agree with, some criticisms I don't formally agree with, but there's other ones that I really do, especially how she while trying to have some sort of revenge or have some accountability for people who were either formally part of the aggressive act against her friend, but also complicit in that act as well. While she's doing that simultaneously, she's also causing horrible damage to other women. So she's kind of continuing the cycle in her own way. And I don't think they address it enough and almost kind of give her a little bit of a hero's view by the end of the movie. I don't think they not what's the word I'm looking for? Just like judge her for her actions. It's like dealt in a really pass by moment that maybe what she's doing is not right, but I don't think it's tough enough on our main character that she is also kind of being really a villain, and not at all what she is doing is right for it, just in the way that she's handling it.
Interesting. I think that the way that the movie is couched, I think she is seen as a little unhinged to begin with. That's when she makes actions like that. I don't necessarily like her actions towards her people who hurt her friend are heroic. I wouldn't consider her a hero as an individual. And I think the movie does touch on the fact that she is not necessarily the most well-adjusted, healthy person. And I think that
But I think it's still like thinks that she has some just reason to treat people this way. Maybe that she's heroic, but that it's not that bad. It's kind of how it feels. Like, yeah, she's a little unhinged. This is crazy, but her somewhat kidnapping the principal's daughter and making her feel that she was raped. It's not that bad, but like it is still mistreat people. Her making someone else. I don't want to spoil it too much, but put a lot of like negative.
I know what you're talking about.
Realities. It is once again continue the cycle of abuse in a way, or even if it's not a reality of abuse, there is no real. It's still the mentality, the psychology of abuse that she's putting in people's minds. I think the movie kind of lets her off the hook.
I think it is. I think the best way to describe it is that in the eyes of her character, the ends justify the means. Mm-hmm. I also think that in some ways, I would like the movie less if they tried to reckon with all that stuff. Like I think a version of Promising Young Woman that tries to be like
not set up for it. To answer those ideas.
No, and that's the thing I think biggest is that I think if you tried to have a movie that grappled with her own impact rather than kind of let her be this angel of justice or something in like the most warped, twisted sense of it, I think that movie is significantly less interesting. And it's certainly an argument that I understand why people are having it. It's not something I have a problem with, and it certainly does not detract from my enjoyment of the film. I had an absolute blast watching Carey Mulligan just destroy on screen, and I think this is one of like best of the decade performances. I think we're going to remember this in 10 years.
How good Carey Mulligan. That's the part I agree with. I think surface level it is just a very entertaining, exciting film.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's our 10. Do you want to do honorable mentions? Want me to go first?
Sure. Go first.
Okay, so I have some honorable mentions. I'm going to give 10 honorable mentions. So my honorable mentions are Run, the Anish Gandhi thriller, good movie. Unpregnant, which is kind of another side of the Never Really Someone Does, which is the comedy, which is like the road trip to get an abortion, but the more comedic version with Haley Richardson. Borat's subsequent movie film, we talked about it. The personal history of David Copperfield I found really enjoyable. I'm also just a sucker for the story of David Copperfield. Emma, I really liked Anya Taylor-Joy in this film. Eurovision, also great. Red, White, and Blue, which is another of the Small X films that makes my top 20, but not my top 10. Dick Johnson is Dead, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which are both in your list, are my honorable mentions as well. What about you?
Yeah, my full list will be unprivatized once this episode comes out.
So will mine.
But it is 102 movies. So I'm going to go through my letterbox. Just my name, Zack Ford. I'm going to go through my top. Also, if you top 25 is usually what I would release as my favorite, and I've been doing the full ranked list. So I'm going to do my top 25. Okay. So 25 documentary Feels Good Man. 24 kind of immigration or refugee horror film His House on Netflix. I want you to check it out. Also a great poster. 23 Shirley, which was mentioned in someone else's top 10 list. 22 Baby Teeth, which we'll talk about soon.
Good movie.
When we go through actor performances. It's a great actor's piece altogether. Great ensemble. 21 Emma. It's kind of beautiful to look at. If you just like production design, costumes, and things. Okay. 20 The Five Bloods. 19 Red, White, and Blue. 18 Boy State. 17 Vast at Night. It was on Paul's list. Pretty stunningly made movie for low money. 16 One Night in Miami. 15 Tenet, or backwards Tenet. 14 Sound of Metal. We almost did an episode on that, as if I try this out. But 13, Morona's Fantastic Tale. It's a Romanian, maybe also French, but I think director's Romanian animated movie about a dog thinking about its life after it died. Real uniquely and expressionistically animated film. 12 Shithouse. We talked about it. 11 Mank.
Interesting. Okay.
Top 10, you could go back to the beginning of the show and listen to it again.
Absolutely. Let's also talk, if we're going to talk about the best of the year, we got to talk about the worst of the year. And let's talk about our worst 5 movies and some honorable mentions of 2020. We can make this a little bit quicker.
2 hours.
We'll do this quick. You like do a sentence on each one. If the other person has something to say, why don't you start with your 5th worst movie? So work. Yeah. Don't start with your worst. Start with your 5th worst.
I understand the language.
We worked through a lot.
My 5th worst movie, Netflix anime movie, Willoughby's. People like this movie. I find it pretty dumb. That's all I got.
Okay, I didn't see it.
It's like a illumination kind of animation stuff. It's not dumb, but it's the same kind of touch.
My 5th worst of the year, The Christmas Chronicles Part 2. It's the Kurt Russell Christmas movie on Netflix. People like this because Kurt Russell is Santa. These movies are not very good. I don't particularly understand why people.
You're stupid for watching it. The first one was a disaster. They love the kid that stole cars. He's very redeemable. He's not a horrible fucking felon that stole a car and should be in prison. All right.
All right. What's your 4?
4 is The Witches. A little bit of a disappointment. I do think Anna Hathaway is really fun in it, but it like dumbs it down for the littlest of kids that also be way too scared about everything happening. The mouse stuff is so silly. I also big disappointment.
Just misses my top 5. It's in the honorable mentions of the worst of the year. Yeah, it's just it never fully commits to being super weird. It doesn't say super traditional. It doesn't say like it seems just like all over the place. It's really kind of a boring movie. It's kind of a boring nothing of a movie that you get to the end of it and you're like, there wasn't even anything that weird to make it really enjoyable. My number 4 is, this is a big hot take. People don't know what to do. Happiest Season, which is the Hulu lesbian Christmas movie that I hated. I absolutely hated what this movie does. I think that the way it treats the relationships is just completely off. I'm not going to go into detail on this. I have a whole review about how much I hate this movie. I think it is a movie where people are treated like shit and then go back to the people that treated like shit, and we're supposed to be happy about that. And I hate it.
And I think when we talk about people who treat people like shit, we're being very judgmental, like we know what their life is like. Okay, this is the point of the movie. Hey, number 3, least favorite movie of the year. This is one most of the time. I don't like talking worst movies just because, one, I don't like watch a lot of movies that are supposed to be horrible. So it's a little bit exaggeration of how much I don't like these movies. But all the ones I end up not liking at the bottom list are ones that for some reason I had some sort of anticipation or excitement for. And a lot of times it's ones I honestly think I'm going to like no matter what people say. This is one I don't really know why I watched. I don't know. It's Sonic. Yeah. I think I just wanted a new release and I watched Sonic. I knew I wasn't gonna like Sonic probably. I'm not a big Jim Carrey fan at all, and I don't like what he does this year. I don't go for him. It's kind of fine, but it's like fine for what I expected, but it's still pretty stupid. That's it.
I didn't see it. My number 3 is Doolittle, which is Robert Downey Jr. plays Doolittle.
That's a why'd you watch movie, it?
It really is. Honestly, it was because it was a big enough movie, and I was like, "That's a big enough movie. I should have seen that." Robert Downey Jr. kind of plays his Sherlock Holmes character, playing like Captain Jack Sparrow. This movie is a mess. It does a bunch of stupid shit. Please watch the Rex Harrison version. That's my favorite.
I realize my bottom list is really funny because I feel like I'm someone that comes off that really loves kids movies and have a lot, and then 4 of my 5 are kids movies. That's because I watch.
You love kids movies. You're also critical of the really bad ones.
Yeah, and
you don't give kids movies a pass. A lot of people give kids movies a pass. They give kids movies a pass. They're like, oh, it's for kids. Who cares? 3 stars.
But it's also because a lot of the adult movies I'm supposed to be bad, I don't watch, but I have some kind of prior interest in kids movies, so I tend to watch them.
Go ahead.
This one is one that I was so convinced I was going to be like one of the few to love this. I thought it was like made for me because it said there's going to be a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters, which there are. There's a Wacky Race aspect, and I was a gigantic Wacky Racers fan as a kid. And it's a scoop. I don't even remember why I don't like this. I think they just there's like
it's a pretty terrible movie. Most people don't like it.
A lot of like modern anime movies, I think, try to modernize it for kids, and the dumbest idea of what modernizing it means. And sometimes you just need to embrace the silliness and the old-fashionedness of some of these cartoons. Same reason things that I have about the new Tom and Jerry movie, which I also did watch, is that they try to bring it into the modern world rather than just accepting it for what it is and letting it be its true self. Not a good movie.
All right, I did not see that. My number 2 is Capone. Tom Hardy plays Capone. Of course, I had to watch this. This movie is fucking terrible. Tom Hardy does the thing he kind of always does, except it really doesn't work in this movie. I don't know why somebody decided to write a screenplay about the time in Al Capone's life where he had syphilis in his brain and was basically just shitting himself and couldn't speak, because it's boring as shit and it's also really, really bad.
Yay, my number one. Hey, this is just like our favorites. We don't have to talk about it that much because we did an episode on it. It's Greyhound. It's fucking boring. Yeah. I like Grey Wolf. That guy's cool. But the rest of the movie, I had no idea what was happening because they use a lot of technical terms, and they isn't directed by Tony Scott to make me understand.
So it doesn't explain it. Yeah, we talked about that for episode. My number one is the Jesus Rolls, which is the Coen brother, the Big Lebowski spinoff, which they don't take advantage of the fact of that, or maybe they were legally threatened to do so. This movie is filled with a bunch of talented actors, and is absolute dog shit. It is impressive at how shitty this movie is. Please never watch it. You want to do quick honorable mentions for your next 5 worst after that?
Yeah, so the New Mutants. I'm a huge X-Men fan and X-Men apologist. Don't like it.
I like the New Mutants.
Jingle Jangle kind of looked nice, but it just kind of fell a little flat for me. A bunch of kids' movies against Timmy Failure. Mistakes were made. Tom McCarthy directed this. And
really?
It's Disney Plus release, and that's what it kind of seemed like. It kind of seemed like a Disney movie. Also written by Steven Pastis, who does Pros Before Swine comics, which I was a giant fan of as a teenager. Wonder Woman 84, Midnight Sky, definition of blah, just like it sits there. I have like no real strong hate feelings and nothing like positive, just a real neutral of a nothing of a movie that I can't say anything about. That's it.
Fair. I actually like New Mutants. Wonder Woman 84 is a movie that gets worse every time I think about it. It's just one of those movies that falls apart. My 5, Radioactive, which is the Amazon Prime biopic of Marie Curie, the scientist, starring Rosamund Pike. I wanted to watch this because I like Marie Curie, and this is just a really boring kind of blah biopic. That's not. It really annoys me when people take really interesting stories and do crappy versions of them, because it means that it's much harder to do one in the future. Irresistible, which is the Jon Stewart, I don't know what the hell he's trying to do. It's trying to be a satire of 97 different things at once, and it really all ends up with you feeling like he probably should have just made a documentary on money and politics, because that's clearly what he wants to talk about. Downhill, which is the remake of Force Majeure, which we talked about, bad. Roald Dahl's The Witches, and Hillbilly Elegy, which is please, can we just make a good movie for, Christian right-wing conservatives with them in it, so that they don't have to defend Hillbilly Elegy. This movie thinks you're stupid and useless caricatures. They could have better portrayals of you. So that's worst 5. Let's talk our awards.
Okay. I was going to bring up. I was trying to say, should we just maybe we can have this still on camera? Should we do a part 2? Because we're already at 2 hours, and we can film it another day.
No, we're finishing, dude.
Okay, we're going to do this real quick. Okay.
We've already talked about a lot of these movies. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go 5-1. You're going to go 5-1 in your category. I'll go 5-1 in mine. Do you have them ranked?
I have them ranked.
Ordered? Okay.
Yeah, I feel like will you go 5-1? How my system works.
I just want to make sure. Will you go 5-1 on best directors?
Okay. I was going to be all prepared too, and then I didn't have stuff open. All right. Well, I don't have them ranked ever winner. So I'm just going to name my 5 and I'm going to name who my top.
Fine. That's fine. That works as well.
Okay. So my nominees, I'll say my winner last. So my runners up: Tommy Roth Stewart for Wolfwalkers, Katherine Johnson for Dick Johnson's Dead, Troy Kaufman from Thinking of Ending Things, Kitty Green for The Assistant, and my winner is Steve McQueen for Lovers Rock.
Wow. So we have 0 in common.
0? That's crazy. Well, we didn't have a lot of common in our top 10s. It was Mangrove, Wolfwalkers, Lovers Rock.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay, so my 5 are, in order, Paul Greengrass, News of the World. Number 4, Spike Lee, To Five Bloods. I really like that more in rewatch. Number 3, Thomas Vinterberg. And for another round, number 2, Edward Fennell for Promising Young Woman. And then number 1 is Steve McQueen for Mangrove.
So, because he had Mangrove instead of Lovers Rock. He was on there. I was just putting Steve McQueen on once also. So he might be on there instead of Kitty Green. Paul Greengrass is the one that surprises me there, just because, and once again, I really like that movie too. I think just as a director movie, it's a little It's a little normie.
That's fair.
It's not
That's fair.
anything as like ambitious that I often would play.
That's fair.
Directors.
I feel like my picks for that category are less interesting than some of the other ones.
I like this
I'm gonna
mode.
go
We're
first.
just gonna do this. I like going through the 5 and saying what surprises us, what we like. Let's continue.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What did I surprise you? I'm surprised you have Kitty Green for the assistants. That was a little surprising. I mean, you like the movie.
I think there's a lot of tonal control that she has that I find impressive.
No, it's one of those things. Like, I'm surprised because I guess I didn't think of that movie on that level, but then when you think of when it gets to the point, it works. Yeah, that's good. I definitely think McQueen was going to be in there for both of us. I'm gonna start my 5. I'll go 5-1 first on Best Actors. Number 5, John Boyega, Red, White, and Blue. Number 4, Ben Affleck, The Way Back. Number 3, Mads Mikkelsen, Another Round. Number 2, Delroy Lindo, The Five Bloods. And number 1, Sean Parks in Mangrove.
We have 2 crossovers I think are predictable.
Yeah. What's surprising? What do you like?
Well, Delroy Lindo is someone that hasn't hit me as hard as everybody else because I find it extra performative, which isn't especially a movie that's the way you asked for, but some of the speeches, like they're fun and exciting. But I
just rewatched.
I never it,
so he really clicked for me on rewatch.
I think also just the Trumpiness of that character just kind of rubs you off, and that seems a little forced. And to try to make that movie modern for me. But I like the 2 that we had crossover. I'm trying to remember. Mads Mikkelsen, always, I think it's a strong pick, but once again, that movie just kind of sat there. But he's you, and I like you being you.
Thank you. Why don't you go with your 5? 5-1.
Okay.
Let's do it. Actors.
So yeah, I'm going to make up my ranking as I go. We're going to do this. Ready?
It's fine. You can do it.
My number 5, Chadwick Boseman, Ma Rainey's Back Bottom. I do appreciate what he's doing, even though I don't love that movie. But I've always liked him as an actor a lot. My number 4, Bill Murray, Lovers Rock. This is my weakest category, by the way. I think I should front run that. Number 3, Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal. My 2, Sean Parks for Mangrove. My number 1 is John Boyega for Red, White, and Blue. I think just because of the movie star kind of aspects that he brings to that role. I find impressive.
Fair. Love Parks thing, and I love Boyega. The ones I was surprised by, I guess I didn't like. One thing I realized is a lot of the Oscar frontrunners, especially in the male categories, just are not working for me.
And I think
so
Bill Murray's running as supporting actor, but I make up my own categories. I consider him lead actor.
Yeah, so he's supporting for me. The Boseman performance, I guess I'm not surprised. I'll just make a thing now. I don't have either Boseman performance.
I'm going to say this now. I think I have both.
I don't have either. I don't think he's bad in either movie.
I
also don't necessarily think he's Oscar worthy in either movie, or like award worthy in either movie. Yeah. And then Riz Ahmed, I watched Sound of Metal and I liked it less than a lot of people. And Racy is the one who really stands out in the movie for me.
We'll get to that.
All right, let's do Best Actress. Why don't you go first?
Okay, Best Actress. Gonna make up my rankings here. Here we go. Number 5, Eliza Scanlon, Baby Teeth. So I said we would talk about the performances. I think that is why that movie functions best, because otherwise it could be like a cancer drama, but the performances are so engaging. I think it's a very different idea of what a teenager going through that moment is. She's great at it. Okay, number 4. I'm going to go Carey Mulligan, Promising Young Woman. Number 3, the best, our greatest we have, Rachel McAdams, Eurovision Song Contest. That's maybe be slightly trolling.
I think you are trolling.
Number 2, Julia Garner, The Assistant. And number 1, Jessie Buckley, I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
We have 2 crossovers, so that makes me happy. The McAdams pick I'm a little shocked by. I don't think she compares to a lot of the other people in this category. I like her performance, but I don't know if it gets that high. Okay, my 5 are number 5, Anya Taylor-Joy and Emma. I think that's just I will always applaud performances where you're the only person who could have given that performance in that movie, and I think she is the only person who could have given that performance in that movie. Number 4 is Jessie Buckley. I'm Thinking of Ending Things. She's the best performance in the movie, and she's just Jessie Buckley is like really quietly. She is doing like this is her first maybe larger movie. She's done a lot of stuff that like even indie people didn't watch. She's really building like a strong resume of like performances.
Yeah.
Not necessarily great movies, but great performances in stuff that sometimes is not deserving of her talents.
I also just read an audiobook read by her. Pretty pleasant, pretty nice.
She's pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Haley Lou Richardson in Unpregnant. I think Haley Lou Richardson is just an absolute star, and I think this movie really shows it off for her. I also like quoting the comic performances, so this is where 1. Number 2 is Sydney Flanagan, Never Really, Sometimes Always. And then number 1, I basically already told you this, it's Carey Mulligan. It's Promising Young Woman. I really hope she wins the Oscar. I think she has a real shot to do it too.
I think she does as well. I think that movie's only rising. This is where my memory is going to hurt because I have things I want to say and I forget them by the time you finish, and I forget who you have in the list. Who is your number 2? Haley Lou Richardson. Flanagan. I always said my thoughts on that, but Haley Lou Richardson, I haven't seen that movie, but I will tell you, Olivia Cook will eat her for breakfast. Olivia Cook, Best Actress of 2021, Blowfish, baby. So that's the one that surprised me.
Zack has insane take.
That movie didn't even touch your honorable mentions. So I think you're just giving away the charm of Haley Richardson. She could be in anything. You're going to put her on your list.
It did touch my honorable mentions.
I did it? Okay. I don't pay attention.
You idiots, my 12.
Oh.
I also put Emma on there. That's even lower.
Yeah, I like Emma though quite a bit. That was not my 25, right? Or no, it was. And that's a great performance. I do think she is one of our best actresses on the 30 as well. Anya Taylor-Joy, big year for her.
Super unique, super unique.
Yeah.
Which is always a good thing if you want to have a long career as an actress. If you have that unique lane, you can always be in. It's a lot harder to push you out even as you age.
Because we don't want to just like talk about how someone looks, but like looks not necessarily being beautiful or anything. It still does matter as far as how to capture screen. She has such a unique look to her that makes her engaging on screen.
Yes,
I'm trying to say it's the least sexist way, but yes.
No, I think you're correct. You're correct. She has a look
one
that
of a kind,
different. Yeah, it's unique. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Best Supporting Actor. I'll go first. My number 5, Clark Peters in Da 5 Bloods. Clark Peters plays Otis, which on rewatch really solidified itself as my favorite supporting performance in that movie. People have been giving it to Boseman, which I think is sort of ridiculous. He's not really in that movie. I don't understand why we're giving him awards for that performance.
He's a Jesus figure. He's great in it. He's just
he's good in it. He's just I think the other characters. I would also take Isaiah Whitlock Jr. over him. I would take Jonathan Majors over him. I think those performances are more interesting. My number 4, David Thewlis. I'm thinking of ending things. David Thewlis absolutely rules in this movie as Jesse Plemons' dad. He's just weird and kind of awesome. Number 3, Mark Rylance, Trial of the Chicago 7. It's the one time it's going to pop onto my list. I like Rylance a lot in this movie. I don't necessarily like the movie that much, but I think Rylance is very good in it. My number 2, Paul Raci, Sound of Music. This is the performance in the film that really popped for me.
You said Sound of Music, right?
Did I really Sound of Metal?
Yeah, he was one of the kids in Sound of Music, in case you guys don't know.
He's Kurt. And my number 1, Bill Murray in On the Rocks. I love Bill Murray. He rules. Bill Murray, very talented. What's your 5 supporting actors?
All right. My number 5, Eli Gorey for One Night in Miami. I think he has a lot of charisma. And for some reason, people are saying he falls in the background. I think he almost can steal the spotlight sometimes. His story is less important, but I think he has a lot of star power. Number 4, Malachi Kirby, Mangrove. Except I typed Mangrove. We talked about Mangrove. Malachi Kirby has a lot of power on screen. My number 3, Leslie Odom Jr., One Night in Miami. And especially, this is a big statement being that I said the final scene I don't think fully works on an episode. That's not why I like it. I think in the argument scenes, I think he has a lot of charisma, but he really owns what he is saying. And I find him so much more persuasive than I'm blanking his name, who played Malcolm X, just because I think
Kingsley Benadir.
Kingsley Benadir. I think just because of his delivery and his passion, I think runs through. Sure. My number 2, Paul Raci, Sound of Metal. Really incredible. And just emits pure empathy and kindness, and it's amazing.
Great philosophy on life. Great philosophy.
Easily could be my number one. And I promise you, this one's, I'm not trolling. I sincerely mean this. My number one is Dan Stevens' Eurovision Song Contest. It grows on me every time. I find it's so funny. His musical performance is so hilarious. But I say at the end, the scenes where he's talking about sexuality or Russia, one, so works as comedic bit, but also I find extremely moving. And it's also just extremely like tragic. And he delivers probably the most emotionally real moment of that movie.
Basically, the only good pronouns joke I've ever seen, because most of them are stupid and offensive, and that one actually is quite impactful.
I am not a Dan Stevens fan. I think he really does not work in lots of movies.
I'm actually surprised you have so many One Night. I'm surprised you like One Night in Miami more than me, because that seems like more of a me movie. Yeah, I think I thought about Aldous Hodge. He still might be my favorite performance in that movie.
Do you know he's in Lady
Killers,
Killers,
interesting.
by the way? Just so you know, he's in Lady Killers. He's one of the people robbing the donut shop at the beginning of Lady Killers.
Thank you for updating. Why don't you give me your 5 best supporting actresses?
Okay, my number 5, Odessa.
I will say before we start, this is a weak category to me.
See, mine was actor. This one was a hard one to get rid of people I really liked. All right. My number 5 is Odessa Young Shirley, who probably could be a lead in this might be Fame ranking because oh my gosh, it's getting so late. What is her name? Who plays Shirley and Shirley?
Oh, Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth Moss, because she's more of a name, I think can't be placed in lead, but Odessa Young really might be bad. So I have Odessa Young. For Shirley, who plays, the younger woman who may or may not be Shirley as a young age or kind of growing or seeing herself in that character at least. My number 4 is Amanda Seyfried Mank, who seems like she is not going to win an Oscar, but she still is delightful and puts a real spin, I think, on the kind of dumb bombshell, because I think that character knows she's much smarter than she is being led to believe, or even historically kind of displayed in the real story of this. I think Amanda Seyfried has a lot of respect for that character that comes off. Now, my number 3 is Essie Davis for Baby Teeth. Essie Davis makes a lot of, gets a lot of renown for Australian roles. One of Australia's best actresses. Had, I think, 2 good performances. I think she's really good in the Ned Kelly Gang movie as well. I think she's great as this mom that might be abusing some medicine they have on stash, but still try to be supportive of this weird relationship, and also how she deal with the tragedy. Ben Mendelsohn, also great. Also Toby, whatever, I forget his last name, who's the young male. All the 4 performances could easily be on this list for me, for Baby Keith. My number 2, just talked about it. This was a big rise for me, Charlene White for Education. I found what she does in the last 5 minutes of that movie extremely, extremely moving. And then my number 1 would be Maria Bakalova for Borat 2. We talked about it.
Interesting. I think, honestly, now I'm realizing one of the reasons that the category so bad for me is I was having trouble remembering all these people that you included, because you're right, Odessa Young is a good pick. Like, you had some good picks in there that I just didn't think about. My number 5, Talia Ryder, Never Really, Sometimes Always. I agree the bottom of my list is, I don't necessarily love the bottom of my list. My number 4, Olivia Cook in Sound of Metal. I do like her in that movie. I actually like her more than Riz Ahmed in that movie.
She might need to be on my list, but she's not.
Riz Ahmed, I think, is legitimately the weakest performance of the 3, which is kind of interesting because I like the movie.
That's a take.
That's my take. I don't think he's bad. I think he's just the weakest of the 3. My number
I'm
3
glad you
is
agree that Olivia Cook is one of our best actresses under 30. It is on the books.
I don't actually agree with this. You have this ridiculous take that I do not agree with and is not backed up by any known performance.
She's on your list and not mine.
I already said this category this week. Number 3, Marissa Tomei, The King of Staten Island. I just like Marissa Tomei playing mom characters. She's quite good at it and very talented. I also almost had Bill Burr because I actually really love Bill Burr in that movie. I think I like that movie more than a lot of people. Number 2, Dylan Galula from Shithouse. She is the RA. I think she's the best performance in the film. I think she's the most
for Charlene White.
I think she's just really interesting and is really good at playing the type of person, the type of college female that is kind of emerging these days in terms of trying, like, being very more vocal about what they want, what is not acceptable, and kind of taking agency over their lives and kind of pushing back at anyone else who tries to put them in a box they don't want to be in. I think she's really good. And then we agree on number one, Maria Bakalova, Borat's subsequent movie film. She's fantastic. She should win the Oscar. She's an absolute steal and the reason the movie works. Congratulations to whichever casting director found her and brought her in, because that was a really, really, really smart choice. And we got one last category. Well, one category for both of us, and then I'll make Zach read a couple categories if he wants to. Let's do best screenplays. I'll go first. I really like the screenplay for Never Rarely, Sometimes Always. I like the screenplay for Promising Young Woman. Another round. I'm thinking of ending things. And then I wanted to throw a shout out to a movie we haven't talked about yet, which is Palm Springs. I think it does kind of an interesting take on the Groundhog Day story. It's also funny and just kind of inventive in a way that we don't always see with movies. What are your screenplays, Zach?
Yeah, my number 5 I would have is Promising Young Woman. I don't know if I still agree with it. I do update these like as soon as I watch movies, so that's why I don't forget things. So I said my thought of my take started to come a little later, but I'll stick with it. Promising Young Woman at 5. My number 4 is Shirley. I think the parallel structure of how they align those two characters is extremely interesting way of telling kind of a biopic. There's also some real ice cold feelings throughout that movie and great lines. I think Michael Stahlberg is also brilliant in that movie. It kind of gets forgotten, and he, I think, was the last second cut of my supporting actor.
He's good.
Yeah, he's really good. My number 3 would be Mank. It's it's a Hollywood movie. There's some great lines that get delivered wonderfully. I don't know. 2 First Cow. I kind of already talked about why that movie works for me. I just think the way they dig in the thematic qualities within the screenplay, I find really smart. And my number 1 is I'm thinking of ending things. Puzzle Box movie. Troy Kaufman, no one's better at making his scripts and screenplays so dense in such an interesting way.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a spreadsheet thing, so you keep some other categories. Are there any other categories you would like to share with us first to comment on?
Yeah, I'll just go through my last 3 that I have now. I kind of
let's do it
more or less for my own categories. So music, that means soundtrack, scores, original songs all together, just music and movies that I liked. I'm going to do unranked, but I'll do my winner. So I have Nomadland, Wolfwalkers.
You have Nomadland?
Oh shit! I didn't revise it because
Zach Ford has committed the ultimate
shit. I need to come up with that. I'm gonna put in the way back as honorable. No shit. It has to. Sorry, wow. It's Soul. It's Soul. So Soul's my 5. Okay. So Soul, Wolfwalkers, Lovers Rock, which is soundtrack, but great. American Utopia. It's David Byrne music. That might be even unfair. But my number 1, Eurovision, baby. The song is integral to the movie. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good list. Good list. I can't argue with that.
Okay, visuals. This is the most me. Just like I'm too dumb to distinguish between things. So to go cinematography, or like what is production design. I just put how the movie looks, everything together. Visual effects, cinematography, costumes, things. But things that if I purely look at the concept of what would I want to hang on a wall. And how it helps tell the story as well, of course. So we got First Cow, Lovers Rock, which I think is a take. I don't think people think that as visually as I do, but I think the way that moves through the crowd is very important.
I disagree with them. I think it's very visual.
Morona's Fantastic Tale. That's the animated dog movie we talked about. It's a really crazy animated movie. So animation actually counts too. The Bath of the Night. It's a very impressive kind of camera work on how they do that with such a low budget. And number 1, I said one of the best looking movies I think ever, Wolfwalkers.
Oh, it's gorgeous. We talked about it for like quite a while on that episode.
Yeah. My last thing is just I going through some scenes that I love throughout the year. So we have, I kind of make up my own names for what these scenes are called. I'd say the Epiphany montage in Soul, I do find really moving. That's a great musical piece that they go through it when he has his epiphany.
Interesting.
Okay. The art heist in Tenet is just like pure fucking thrills. They drive a fucking airplane into a warehouse.
Yeah. I wish the rest of Tenet worked as well as that sequence.
Yeah,
I would love.
That scene works great. The party mashup at Eurovision I talked about. I find it really moving.
Absolutely
the
great
mashup
scene.
of all the stars. The funeral scene I just talked about in today's episode for Dick Johnson is dead.
Great scene. Great scene.
And easily the best scene of the year is Silly Games and Lovers Rock. I talked to in length about.
I feel like you could pick like several scenes in Lovers Rock to be.
Yeah,
like,
I did have
potential
Kung Fu Fighting on the list for a bit. I usually do a person of the year, like people who are just like in a number of things that like made a mark. I don't have names written down. I got to come up with this. But someone who really made. I think Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, would easily be on that list.
I think the person of the year is kind of simple. You've already talked about this. It's Steve McQueen.
Oh shit! Yes, he's the person of the year. Yeah.
Steve McQueen made Small Axe. He made 5 individual films on a subject that doesn't get covered. He casts them perfectly. He directs them great. It's kind of a brilliant.
Yeah.
It's like, we talked about it. It's the cinematic achievement of the year. Steve McQueen.
Good definition of that thing.
And it's amazing.
Yeah, person who owned the year in movies the most, Steve McQueen easily. Can you guess who last year was? This is often an obvious category. Think of last year. I have 2 people mentioned. If you guess either of them, you win $1 million. You get 10 seconds.
What was Zach's favorite movie last year?
Someone had a huge rise last year from being a little known to like widely known.
Give me a hint.
Actress.
It's an actress.
And someone else who's been really loved for a while, but finally got is being one of the most. The other one is really becoming like one of the go-to actors and gained some Oscar attention finally as well. Those are my 2 people.
2019. Somebody who rose.
Love both of them.
I love both of them.
Yes, one actress, one actor.
How am I blanking on this so badly?
Big years last year. 2019.
Years left?
2020. Thinking 2019.
No, I'm thinking about it. Whew.
Okay. 5, 4.
I'm blanking. I got nothing.
Florence Pugh.
Okay, good.
No Women, Midsummer, and that wrestling movie. And Adam Driver.
Oh, the man. Adam Driver rules.
Yeah, told you.
Although I would argue Adam Driver popped in like.
But it's not about when you popped. It's just people had defining years. I think it had a defining year. Why can't I remember the other movies he was in that year, other than
The Report?
The Report, yeah.
Marriage Story.
Marriage Story. I knew that one. That was the other one. I was thinking of.
The Great Rise of Skywalker.
That's it.
The only reason that the only argument you can make against him is that he also had that. Oh, he's in The Dead Don't Die too. But that's also not good. I would argue against that one because he's like, that's only 50.
Well, Florence Pugh to me is the easy winner between Midsummer and.
You know what? There's actually a much better year for Driver a couple years ago.
Oh, Brad Pitt needs to be on that list. Brad Pitt, fucking.
Actually,
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Ad Astra.
Can I just also? I'm going to call you out here. I'm going to call you out here. 2016 and 2017 were both much better years for Adam Driver.
You can be on the list twice.
In fact, 2017, Meyerowitz Stories, Logan Lucky, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Yeah,
you can be on the list 3 times as I decide. It's just who of anyone defined that year the most. And if they make one movie, they don't count.
Is James Franco going to be on some year? Because he does like 10 movies a year.
No, he's not good.
Do you have any more thoughts on 2020? Want to wrap it up? We're nearing 2.5 hours. It's the longest episode. No one will be listening at this point. This is literally just our.
I'm pretty sure 2020 is the year that never ends, and we're still in it. And we're leading Groundhog Year. We're still in 2020. Don't let the calendar fool you. Oscars tell us we are still in 2020.
Yeah, this was fun. We got to go through all our performances. I think what this episode has proved more than anything is that all the people out there saying there were no movies released in 2020 are looking like complete morons right now. We just talked for 2.5 hours about great performances and great movies, and we talked about like 60 combined different movies. Like, there are a lot of good stuff out there.
Who also say no movies get released after the theaters close also definitely saw Sonic in theaters, and that's what they think a real movie is. So I don't want to hear this shit.
Well, they're also probably bitching because they saw like Artemis Fowl and they decided that was all movies. Please. there are a lot of access to these movies out there. It is relatively easy to find access to most of these movies. You will probably enjoy quite a lot of them. It was a really good year for movies. It was not the blockbuster year. We don't have any big billion-dollar winners that we can talk about. We have a lot of really great smaller movies. And that's what cinema is, you know? It's not just about the big stuff. It's about the small stuff. And in fact, it's a lot more about the small stuff because there's a lot less of the big stuff in any year, and especially this year.
There's still a lot of movies I love, and I will like this year a lot in memory. Not
Absolutely.
the year itself,
Absolutely.
but the year movies.
Dude, I mean, I can't wait to rewatch some of the stuff on my list again.
I got to don't rewatch movies that much, and 3 of these movies I've seen 3 times, partly because we covered them in the show. But
yeah, but I rewatched the Five Bloods. That was a great rewatch. That gets better on rewatch. That was really enjoyable. With that being said, I think we have come to the end of our discussion of the best movies of 2020, a Lucas and Zack special. It's time to announce the next topic. Are you excited, Zach?
Forget what it is.
Next topic.
So yes.
I'm glad you're my hub man. Zach is my ultimate hub man. April, we're going to cover what we are calling Lucas and Zack movies. These are movies that the two of us both love. And we are starting it off the first Saturday in April covering I Love You Man.
Yeah, no, pumped.
Which is what we which is what we say to each other all the time. Not really.
No,
we do
play
a lot of.
To me, and I just tell you, I don't know if I'm ready for this yet.
Actually, we do. We don't do that, but we do go to a lot of Fish concerts together, and we love the band.
Fish. It's like you have never seen this movie.
What is?
Yeah, I don't think
there's a movie where some.
This is why we cut podcasts off before we get to 2 hours.
There's a movie where somebody loves the band Fish. I'm gonna have to look this up after. It's gonna drive me insane. Movie where someone loves fish. Someone loves the band Fish.
Do you ever look at your past Google searches and laugh at yourself that you're Googling things like last movie where someone saw fish?
Yes. My favorite thing
I
did an entire show off my previous Google searches.
Yeah. My favorite thing I ever Googled is what bird makes the sound that I spelled out betwee, twee, twee.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, thank you, folks, for watching this listening to this ridiculously long episode. We are now leaving because both of us have gone off the deep end. We will be back soon. I Love You Man is coming. Lucas and Zack movies are coming. We have topics for May. We might do a Q&A when we get into a year. Oh boy, life is good. The podcast is rocking. We just did 2.5 hours and both of us are brain dead. Zach, do you have a final song to sing us out, or are we just ending this?
I'm going to just go straight to the chorus because I forgot the melody goes for the verses. We're on the Zack and... Oh, shit. It's Lucas and Zack. I'm going to get this down one day.
Just do it.
We're on the Lucas and Zack podcast. Come on inside. Taking that ride to Lucas and Zack podcast. Oh, we'll take that ride. That's all I got.
That's good enough for us. Peace out, folks.
This morning, come on inside. Taking that ride. Oh, I'm like on the wrong verse now. I can't read this. Bye.